Welcome, dear wanderer. You found your way here, not by accident, but by a gentle current, the current that brings tired souls to still shores. This is the empty boat, a place of quiet stories, of whispered truths, where no one is trying to fix you or change you, only to sit beside you and listen with you, as the wind moves through the pines, as the moonlight touches the river, as your breath softens into now. Here, we will drift through 25 Zen tales, each one a little lantern guiding you inward. Let go. You're already home. You're already enough. Let the first story begin. Story 1. The leaf that let go. It began with a breeze, the kind you don't notice at first, like a whisper brushing the edge of your awareness. The kind that moves not just through trees, but through time. At the edge of the forest temple, under a maple tree that had grown beside the monk's hut for decades, a single leaf trembled. It was small, curled at the tips, golden now, with veins like fragile threads of memory. The other leaves had already fallen, but this one lingered. Each morning, the old monk stepped out quietly with his wooden sandals and his cup of warm, barley tea. He would pause beneath that tree and look up. He never said anything. He simply noticed. Noticed the way the light hit the leaf, noticed its silence. One morning, the disciple, young, impatient, full of questions, asked the master, "Why do you always look at that one leaf?" The monk replied, "Because it reminds me of us." Us, the monk nodded, clinging, longing, fear of letting go. The disciple frowned. "But isn't that just nature? Maybe the wind hasn't been strong enough." The monk smiled. "Yes, and maybe the leaf still thinks it's not time." The boy didn't understand. He looked up at the leaf. It barely moved. A stubborn shimmer of gold in the chill of approaching winter. The days passed. The trees became bare skeletons. The nights whispered of snow. Still, the leaf clung. And then, one morning, without drama, without a gust, without ceremony, the leaf let go. It didn't fall. It danced. It twirled gently through the air like it had waited a lifetime to remember how. No one noticed, except the monk, and perhaps the sky. He watched it land softly on a stone. Then he bowed, not to the tree or to the leaf, but to the letting go. Later that evening, the disciple returned from chopping wood, frustrated. His hands were raw, his thoughts tangled. "Master," he said, "I don't understand people. I try so hard to be good, to be right, but nothing ever feels enough. My parents think I've wasted my life here. My friends no longer write. I meditate. I follow the rules. Why do I still feel stuck?" The monk placed a fresh cup of tea in front of him and said nothing. After a pause, he asked, "Did you see the leaf fall today?" "No." The monk gestured to the stone outside, now covered in frost. "That leaf waited a long time. Every morning I looked at it, not to see it fall, but to honor its fear." He looked into the disciple's eyes. "You are that leaf, aren't you?" The boy looked away. "I don't know what I'm holding on to. Maybe it's not about knowing. Maybe it's about allowing." The parable. Within the story, in many Zen traditions, there is an old tale of a monk who carried a woman across a muddy river. Another monk, shocked, scolded him afterward. "You know we do not touch women." The elder smiled and replied, "I left her at the river. Are you still carrying her?" We all carry things long after they have passed. Like the leaf, we cling, Not always because we need to, but because we've forgotten how to trust the wind. We imagine that if we let go, we'll lose ourselves. But often, letting go is how we find the self that was never burdened to begin with. Psychological reflection. Why we cling from the moment we're born, we learn to hold. Hold onto the hand. Hold onto attention. Hold onto identity. As we grow, that holding becomes habit, especially when life becomes unpredictable. The child whose parent left, the teenager mocked for their feelings, the adult betrayed or silenced or disappointed. Each of us, at some point, grips tightly to something: control, perfection, past versions of ourselves, old grief, future fantasies, people who are no longer here, guilt that isn't ours to carry. We hold on because it gives us the illusion of safety. But safety isn't always stillness. Sometimes it's movement. Sometimes it's the courage to fall. Modern psychology recognizes this as attachment trauma. When we internalize the idea that to let go means to be abandoned, to lose love, to fail. But Buddhism gently whispers, letting go isn't rejection. It is release. It is trust. Whispered wisdom from the Dharma in the Samyutta Nikaya, the Buddha says, just as a snake sheds its skin, one must let go of what is unwholesome to be free. And in the Heart Sutra, no eyes, no ears, no nose, no tongue, no fear, no attachment, no attainment and no non-attainment. Therefore dwell in the wisdom that sees beyond clinging. Clinging blinds us to what already is. The monk didn't resent the leaf for staying. He honored it, and yet he didn't beg it to fall. He trusted it would when it was ready. Sleep reflection. Gentle meditation for the listener. So tonight, before sleep takes you, place one hand on your chest. Feel the rise and fall. You are held by your own breath, not by your thoughts, not by others' approval, not by your past. Now ask yourself gently, what am I still gripping, even though it's already over? And do not answer quickly. Let the silence be the response. Then breathe in. I am safe. Breathe out. I am free to let go. And if the leaf within you is not ready tonight, that's okay. You are still the tree. You are still the sky. You are still here. Story 2. The Bell and the Anger. The bell had not rung in years. It sat quietly in the northern garden of the monastery, beneath a weathered pagoda where moss had grown thick along the wooden beams. No one touched it. Not out of neglect, but reverence. Its sound, the elders said, was not meant to mark time, but to call time back into presence. It was a heavy thing, forged long ago with a prayer melted into its core. May all who hear this sound awaken, but the bell was cracked. A fracture ran down its side, like a memory that would not fade. The monks no longer struck it. Some feared its tone might be bitter now, no longer clear. Others simply ignored it. Only one person still visited the bell. A young nun named Kaya. Kaya was not like the others. She did not sit with quiet hands or smile in composed gentleness. She moved with tension, spoke too quickly, and her eyes carried a fire that frightened even the wind. When she swept the meditation hall, the bristles hit the floor with sharp rhythm. When she walked, the gravel scattered. And when she sat to meditate, her breath trembled with an invisible storm. The old master noticed. One evening, as the lanterns were being lit, he approached her at the bell pagoda. "You come here often," he said. voice as soft as dusk. Kaya didn't turn. "I'm angry, Master." "At what?" "Everything," she whispered. "The past. People who left. The ones who stayed. Myself." The Master sat beside her. "Then strike the bell." She looked at him, stunned. "But it's broken." "All the more reason," he replied. She hesitated, then stood, picked up the wooden striker, and swung. The sound rang out, imperfect, yes, but hauntingly beautiful. It wavered like grief echoing through time. Kaya froze. She hadn't expected the crack to sing. She looked at the Master. "Why does it sound so honest?" "Because broken things don't pretend. The tail, beneath the bell there, is a Zen saying. If you point to the moon, don't confuse the finger for the moon. So too, if you strike a bell, don't listen only to the tone. Listen to what remains after. Anger is such a bell. When it strikes within us, we feel only the noise, the heat, the pressure, the fire in the chest. We label it bad. We fear it, but we rarely sit with what echoes after the rage fades. And yet the crack in the bell does not ruin the sound. It gives it depth. Just as sorrow can deepen compassion, or loss can make love feel sacred again. Kaya's storm in the days that followed, Kaya returned each night to the bell, not to strike it, but to listen. Some evenings she wept. Others she simply breathed. One morning, during walking meditation, she turned to the Master. "I thought anger made me strong, but now I see it made me hard." The Master nodded. "There is a difference between a wall and a root." She paused. "But what do I do with the rage that's still inside?" He looked at her with eyes that had seen many storms. "You let it ring. Not to hurt, but to awaken." Psychological. Insight. The roots of anger is not the enemy. It is a messenger. In modern psychology, anger is considered a secondary emotion. Beneath it often lies pain, fear, disappointment, shame. We become angry when boundaries are crossed, when needs are unmet, when truths are ignored. But most of us have never been taught to listen to anger. We suppress it, or we explode with it. Both are forms of disconnection. Suppression leads to internal war, anxiety, tension, fatigue. Explosion leads to external harm, words we regret, actions we can't take back. What if anger was a bell? Not a curse, but a call. Not something to silence, but something to witness. When we allow space for our emotions without judgment, we begin to hear the tone beneath the noise, the story the anger carries. Zen and the fire. Within, in the Anguttara Nikaya, the Buddha said, "Holding onto anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned." But he also said, "Just as a man who is struck by an arrow does not weep at the arrow, but at the pain, so too must we not curse anger, but see what it points to." In Zen, emotion is not an enemy of enlightenment. It is a doorway. The Master did not fear Kaya's fury. He honored it. He saw not the heat, but the wound beneath it, and he trusted that she, like the bell, could still sing. A modern mirror. You and the bell. How do you deal with your anger? Do you lash out? Do you pretend it isn't there? Do you label yourself bad for even feeling it? Pause. Breathe. Listen. Anger may be telling you something, that you were unheard, that you were crossed, that something sacred in you was dishonored. You do not need to strike others with your rage, but neither must you bury it. Instead, strike the bell. Let the sound move through you. Then listen to what remains. That is where the healing begins. Whispered. Closing. A bell for your sleep tonight as you lay your head down. Imagine the bell, not in a monastery, but in your chest, in your memory. In the place that still aches when you think of them, or yourself, ask gently, what have I not allowed myself to feel? What fire have I feared would destroy me? Then breathe in. I welcome the sound. Breathe out. I do not fear the echo. Anger is not who you are. It is what passed through you on its way to becoming light. And just like the cracked bell, you are still able to ring. You are still able to awaken. Story 3. The monk who waited for rain. In the highlands where clouds often passed without promise, there lived an old monk who had once been a farmer. His name was forgotten by most. He no longer used it. To the villagers below, he was known simply as the one who waits. He did not preach. He did not perform ceremonies. He did not travel down the mountain to beg for rice like the other monks. Instead, he waited for rain. He had built no temple, only a hut, no shrine, only a stone bowl to collect water. Every morning, he sat outside that hut, legs crossed, hands on his lap, eyes toward the horizon. He watched the sky not with longing, but with presence. Children would run up the trail and ask, "Why are you waiting for something that never comes?" He'd smile, "Because I no longer need it to come." The desert of a life. Before he wore the robe, the monk had been a farmer, a husband, a father, a man of the soil. His land had been his pride. Rows of rice, fields of sesame, citrus trees singing in spring. And then, one year, the rain stopped. For months, he dug deeper, waited longer, prayed louder. His wife fell ill. His son left for the city. The trees withered, and one night, when even the crows had left, he collapsed beside the last wilted vine and screamed into the dirt, "Why do you not come?" The sky said nothing. Only the silence answered. That night he left. Left the house, the land, the name. He walked barefoot for 3 days until he reached the mountain. He built a hut of driftwood. He gave away his words, and he began to wait. Not for rain, but for understanding. The villager who asked too many questions. Years passed. The seasons grew crueler. One day, a young man from the village came to the monk, angry. "My father says you're a fool, that you waste your life doing nothing, that this waiting of yours is madness." The monk stirred his tea. "Is that what you believe too?" "I don't know," the boy admitted. "I just don't understand. You gave up your farm, your family. For what?" The monk looked toward the horizon. "For the storm that taught me how to live without it." The boy laughed, bitterly. "That doesn't make sense." The monk placed a small seed in the boy's hand. "Some things only grow when you stop watering them." The deeper rain, it would be easy to dismiss the monk as mad, to see his stillness as defeat, to pity him for sitting each day beneath a sky that rarely wept. But what no one knew was this. The monk no longer waited for water from the clouds. He had learned to feel rain in other places, in the breath of wind through dry bamboo, in the silent tears of the widow who once came to sit beside him, in the boy who returned each year, a little quieter, a little softer. Rain did not mean water. Rain meant surrender. And surrender was the true nourishment. Buddhist parable. Within the story, in the Dhammapada, The Buddha once told a tale of a man stuck in a dry well. He screamed for help, but no one heard. He clawed at the walls. He cursed the gods. Finally, exhausted, he closed his eyes. In that silence, he heard the faintest sound, the trickle of water behind the wall. When he stopped struggling, he found the spring. The monk's life mirrors this. He stopped demanding. He stopped clinging. And in doing so, he became receptive to a different kind of rain. Modern psychology and the need for control. How often have you found yourself in drought, not of water, but of love, of certainty, of meaning? When we feel deprived, we fight, we overwork, we panic, we grasp at control. This is natural. The nervous system seeks survival, but control is a mirage. We schedule, we plan, we beg for clarity from the future. Yet the more we cling, the more parched we feel. Modern psychology calls this intolerance of uncertainty, a state where the mind believes that not knowing is dangerous, and yet it is in the not knowing that faith is born. It is in the surrender that peace finds us. Zen. Reflection. The practice of waiting without wanting. In Zen, to wait is not to delay. To wait is to be with. The monk was not waiting for rain. He was waiting with the earth, with emptiness, with longing, with all the things he could not change. This is the art of compassionate presence. You sit, not to get something, but to remember you already are something. You wait, not to escape the moment, but to fully join it. A letter from the sky one day, many years after the monk had grown thinner and slower, a storm came. It began not with thunder, but with stillness, the kind that settles over mountains where nature is holding its breath. And then the clouds cracked open. Rain fell. The villagers below ran out with buckets and songs. Children screamed with joy. But at the top of the mountain, the monk did not move. He sat in silence, soaked. A single tear rolled down his cheek, not for the water, but for all the years he had learned to live without it. The boy, now a man, returned. The next day, "I saw the rain came," he said. "Was it worth the wait?" The monk smiled. "I wasn't waiting for the rain. I was waiting to stop needing it." Meditative closure. Letting go of outcome tonight before you sleep. Ask yourself, what storm have I been waiting for to feel whole again? A message, a lover, a recognition, a relief. Now whisper, even without the storm, I am still the sky. And breathe. Inhale. I allow. Exhale. I release. Not all thirst must be quenched with answers. Sometimes the thirst itself leads you home. You do not need the rain to bloom. You need only to stop chasing it. And in that stillness, you may find the spring that was always within you. Story 4. The teacup of anxiety. There is a kind of silence only found in tea rooms. It is not the silence of nothingness, but of intention. The clink of a cup, the quiet drip of water, the breath between gestures. At the edge of a mountain village, hidden behind old persimmon trees and a mossy gate, stood a humble tea house. Its roof sagged slightly, as if tired from decades of listening. Its walls were thin, but they held stories thick as smoke. It was here that a wandering samurai came one evening, restless, uninvited, and aching for something he could not name. He entered with loud footsteps, sword at his side, shoulders tense as if still carrying the battlefield on his back. The tea master, an old monk with trembling hands and eyes like morning mist, welcomed him with a single bow. I'm not here for a ceremony, the samurai growled. I'm just thirsty, the monk nodded. Then let us drink. The pouring that spoke more than words. The samurai sat heavily, arms crossed. The monk placed an empty teacup before him and began to pour. But the tea did not stop. It rose, spilled over the rim, ran across the wooden table like a slow unraveling. Stop, the samurai snapped. You're spilling it. The monk looked at him gently. You are like this cup, he said, so full of thoughts, tension, questions, and fear. There is no room for anything new. The samurai's face reddened. I didn't ask for a lesson. And yet, the monk whispered, the cup is already speaking. Anxiety, the invisible overflow. We often think of anxiety as panic, as racing thoughts, trembling hands, quickened breath. But more often, anxiety is quiet. It is the constant hum in the background, the pressure that builds slowly, the tea that spills invisibly. The samurai did not know he was anxious. He thought he was just tired, irritated, alert. But under his armor was fear, of failure, of meaninglessness, of peace itself. Sometimes we fear calm more than we fear chaos, because in stillness, there is nothing left to hide behind. The story. Beneath the tea, the monk did not speak again that evening. He poured another cup, this time with precision. The tea swirled gently, releasing steam scented with roasted barley and mountain air. The samurai drank in silence. As the minutes passed, something softened. His shoulders dropped, his breath deepened, his hand moved slightly away from the hilt of his sword. In the space where noise once lived, stillness began to whisper, and when he looked into the empty cup after the last sip, he saw not his reflection but his space he had forgotten he carried within. Zen teaching, emptying the cup. There is a Zen koan that asks, can you see your own eye? It is not a riddle, but a mirror. You cannot see your own eye without a reflection, and you cannot see your own thoughts without stillness. Anxiety clouds the mirror. Thoughts chase thoughts. We become so full of reactions that we forget we are not the contents, we are the container. The monk poured not just tea, but awareness. The samurai learned that peace was not given. It was revealed when he stopped filling his mind with war. Modern psychological reflection, the crowded mind anxiety, is the mind's attempt to control uncertainty. When we don't know what's coming, the brain fills in the blanks, with fear, with scenarios, with endless what-ifs. This is normal. This is protective, but when left unchecked, it becomes suffering. The modern world fills us daily with stimulation, notifications, alerts, news, deadlines, expectations, comparison, internal voices shouting, do more, be more, fix it. But the nervous system, like the teacup, has a limit. When we are too full, we don't need more solutions. We need space. We need ritual. We need pause. Ritual as remedy. The way of tea. The monk understood this. That is why the tea ceremony exists, not for etiquette, but for healing. Every gesture in tea is designed to slow you down. The boiling of water, the warming of the cup, the whisking of the leaves, the turning of the bowl, the first sip in silence. These are not meaningless steps. They are medicine. They bring the mind home. The samurai, who had known only swiftness and violence, began to remember what slowness felt like. And in slowness, the body tells the truth. What are you full of? You, dear listener, may not carry a sword, but perhaps you carry 100 open tabs in your mind, unfinished tasks, worries about tomorrow, regret from yesterday. Tonight, your cup may be full too. Ask gently, have I made space for stillness today? Not silence, but stillness. Not numbness, but calm presence. You don't have to abandon the world to find peace. You simply need to pour a little out, even one drop. Whispered meditation before sleep. Tonight, take a warm drink, tea, water, whatever, brings comfort. Hold the cup in your hands. Close your eyes. Feel the warmth, the weight, the scent. Now ask yourself, not urgently, but curiously, what am I full of tonight? Worries, opinions, overthinking, unspoken grief. Let the warmth of the cup remind you, you are the vessel. You can choose to pour some out. Breathe in, I make space. Breathe out, I am enough. And when your thoughts rise again, as they do not fight them. Simply notice and return to the cup. Let the tea be your breath. Let your breath be your return. And let the sleep come, not as escape, but as the final sip of presence. Story 5. A Candle in the Fog. The fog came every morning to the lakeside village. It did not ask permission. It did not apologize. It arrived like a tired ghost, laying its body across the water, the trees, the paths. Some days it was thick and silver, swallowing the horizon. Other days it moved like breath across the skin, gentle, wet, invisible, but always it came. And always there was the girl with the candle. She lived at the edge of the village, in a one-room house made of driftwood and forgotten planks. Each morning, before the sun rose, she would light a single candle and walk into the fog. She did not speak. She did not rush. She simply walked. Some said she was mad. Others said she was praying. But those who truly watched her noticed something strange. She never seemed lost. Even in the thickest fog, when others could not see a hand in front of their faces, she walked as if guided by something not of this world. The child who could not see one day, a child from the village, followed her. He was small, afraid of many things: darkness, insects, the sound of doors closing, but most of all, he feared not knowing. He needed answers, maps, light, certainty. That morning, when the girl lit her candle, he crept behind her, barefoot, heart pounding, nearly invisible beneath the weight of the fog. "Where are you going?" he asked. She didn't turn. "Into the morning." "But how do you know where it is?" "I don't," she said. "Then how can you walk?" She stopped and lifted the candle between them. "Because I trust the light more than I fear the fog." Fog as metaphor, fog is not the absence of light. It is the softening of form. It blurs the sharp edges. It turns paths into questions. In our lives, we all walk through fog, moments where clarity vanishes, when the future disappears into white, when the mind cannot see what's ahead and panics. Uncertainty is the fog of the soul, and yet, Zen teaches us, the path is not always meant to be seen, it is meant to be felt. The monk's story. The girl had learned this from an old monk who had once lived in the hills. He was blind, and yet he was the best guide the village had ever known. People came from far away to ask him how to live, what decisions to make, which path to follow. He never answered directly. Instead, he would ask them to close their eyes. Then he would say, "Now walk with me." Do not look, feel, not with your feet, but with your breath, not with your mind, but with your being. The fog is not your enemy, it is your teacher. The girl, orphaned and afraid, had found him once, crying by the lake. He had handed her a candle and whispered, "This is not to see the world. It is to remind you that there is always a light." Psychological reflection, the fear of not knowing modern. Life teaches us to crave certainty. We are taught to plan, to predict, to always know what's next. But life does not obey these demands. People leave, illness arrives, plans unravel, and the mind, untrained in ambiguity, begins to spiral. This is called intolerance of uncertainty, a common root of anxiety. We try to overthink, over-control, over-analyze. But the more we chase certainty, the more lost we become. Because life, like the fog, cannot be forced to part. Zen practice. Walking in not knowing. Zen calls this practice beginner's mind, the ability to enter each moment with openness, without needing to categorize, label, or solve. The girl walking with her candle was not looking for an endpoint. She was practicing presence in each step. She trusted the warmth in her hands, the flicker of light, the breath that rose and fell without question. That was enough. The moment. The child understood. They had walked for nearly an hour. The fog had thickened. The path disappeared. The world felt silent and infinite. The child stopped. Panic rose. "I don't know where we are," he cried. The girl turned and knelt beside him. "Can you see your feet?" He nodded. "Can you feel your breath?" He nodded again. "Then you are not lost. You are just learning to be here." She placed the candle in his hands. "Take one step, just one." He did, and the fog did not part. But something in his chest did. Buddha's teaching on the unseen. Path in the Itivuttaka, the Buddha says, "Uncertain is life, certain is death. Therefore, walk the path with awareness, not with fear." And in the Avatamsaka Sutra, "Do not seek to follow in the footsteps of the wise. Seek what they sought." This means, do not look for maps. Look for presence. Look for truth in your breath, not in your thoughts. The fog teaches us to return to the now. Modern living and the candle practice. In your own life, you may face fog, a diagnosis, a breakup, a career change, a deep, unshakable doubt about who you are. You may want to wait until the fog clears to move. But healing begins when you take one step, with gentleness. Your candle may be different, a journal, a quiet cup of tea, a daily breath meditation, a walk with no destination. These are your lights. They may not show the whole road, but they remind you that you are still walking, still alive, still held. Sleep. Meditation. Holding the candle tonight. Before you sleep, imagine yourself in a fog. There is no danger, only stillness, only the sound of your own breathing. Now imagine a candle in your hand, a warm, flickering light. It does not show the whole world, only the next few inches, but that is enough. Breathe in. I am here. Breathe out. I do not need to know everything. Let the fog be soft. Let the candle be your heart. You are not lost. You are learning to walk without fear. And that is the path. Story 6. The Master and the Broken Bowl. The bowl had once been flawless. It was made of white clay, burnished smooth, glazed with ash and pine, fired in the ancient kilns of Shigaraki. It sang when struck with a wooden spoon, a soft, earthy sound, like a secret spoken between mountains. The master kept it in a simple wooden cabinet, alongside his brushes and incense. He never boasted of its beauty. But those who drank tea from it remembered something strange. The tea tasted quieter, the world slowed slightly, and silence sat more easily beside them. Until one day, it broke. The shattering, it happened during morning chores. The new apprentice, a boy named Riku, clumsy with youth and eager hands, was sweeping the shelves when his elbow nudged the cabinet. The bowl tumbled, struck the edge of the altar, and shattered into 6 uneven pieces. The boy froze. The broom fell from his hands. He knelt and stared at the broken clay as if he had just cracked the moon. The master entered moments later, pausing at the threshold. Riku bowed low, eyes burning with shame. "I broke it," he whispered. "The beautiful bowl. I was careless. I'll leave the monastery." The master walked forward slowly, eyes resting not on the boy, but on the pieces. Then, with a calm voice, he said, "No, you will stay, and we will mend it." The art of kintsugi. The master retrieved a small wooden box from his shelves. Inside was a delicate brush, a pot of lacquer, and a small pouch filled with gold dust. "This," he said, "is kintsugi, the golden joinery. We do not hide the break, we honor it." Riku watched in wonder as the master sat, aligning each broken shard carefully. He applied the sticky resin, and before it dried, dusted the join with powdered gold. The cracks shimmered in the afternoon light. "But it's still broken," Riku said. "Yes," the master replied. "And now it tells a deeper story. The story's in our scars. So often, we fear being broken. We treat cracks in our lives, grief, failure, trauma, heartbreak, as shameful. We hide them behind false smiles, curated images, polite silence. We tape ourselves back together with perfectionism, denial, or isolation. But Zen teaches, what is cracked is open. What is open can breathe, and what breathes can heal. The bowl, once flawless, had now become a teacher. It taught of tenderness, of resilience, of truth. It taught that beauty is not in being untouched by life, but in how we meet life's touch. The monks passed. The master had not always lived in a temple. Long ago, before the robes and chants, he had lived in a city filled with noise and ambition. He was a craftsman, building porcelain for nobles and merchants, perfect bowls, identical, lifeless. Then one day, a fire swept through the workshop. Everything was destroyed. His hands, once praised for precision, were scarred. He could no longer shape clay the same way. He wandered for weeks, broken not in body, but in spirit. It was only when he arrived at a remote temple and saw a cracked bowl filled with lotus petals that something inside him softened. He stayed, he learned, he wept, and he never made a perfect bowl again. Psychological reflection. Embracing imperfection in modern psychology, we know the weight of shame. It is not guilt. That says, I did something wrong. Shame says, I am wrong. When we break, emotionally, physically, relationally, we often internalize the fracture. We begin to believe we are unworthy of love, success, peace. This belief isolates us. It leads to anxiety, depression, disconnection. But healing begins when we acknowledge the break, not as a flaw to erase, but as a chapter in our story. Therapists today often use narrative therapy, the practice of rewriting our internal storylines to include resilience, not just rupture. Kintsugi is the Zen form of that practice. You do not erase the pain. You gild it. The master's lesson. After the bowl was repaired, the master served tea again using it. Riku hesitated. But won't it leak? The master smiled. No more than your heart, which also broke once. And yet, here you are, still holding warmth. They drank in silence. Later that night, the master placed the bowl on the altar, not in the cabinet, not behind glass, but in plain sight. Let all who entered see, this bowl lived, it fell, it rose, and so could they. Zen teachings on wholeness in brokenness in the Lankavatara Sutra, the Buddha says, things are not what they seem, nor are they otherwise. This is the essence of paradox. A broken bowl is still a bowl. A wounded heart still loves. A grieving soul still smiles. Zen does not seek to erase pain. It invites us to sit beside it, to sip tea with it, to see it not as enemy, but as fire that tempers gold. Your broken bowl, you too have been broken, perhaps by loss, by betrayal, by illness, by the unbearable silence of dreams that never came true. You may carry invisible fractures, scars the world cannot see. But within those lines, there is gold, your ability to feel, to endure, to soften, to begin again. That is your lacquer. You are not here to be perfect. You are here to be whole, which includes every crack. Evening meditation. Honoring the fracture tonight. Find a quiet space. Close your eyes. Place one hand over your heart. Imagine your heart as a bowl. Now ask, where has it cracked? Where did something fall? And I thought I would not recover. Do not rush to fix it. Do not apologize for it. Instead, breathe in. I honor the break. Breathe out. I mend it with gold. Visualize your wounds glowing softly, not as wounds, but as stories of survival. You are not broken. You are lived. And that is the most beautiful shape of all. Story 7. The bird that forgot to sing. There was once a forest where every tree remembered music. Each dawn, the canopy shimmered with notes. Warblers whistled, thrushes trilled, larks painted the sky with golden sound. But among them was one bird who did not sing. She was small, with feathers the color of ash and autumn, and eyes that once gleamed like water under moonlight. She had once sung, that much was certain. But now she sat silently on the same branch each day, unmoving. Others tried to coax her. Just hum, chirped the finch. Start small, suggested the wren. Remember the sunrise, pleaded the robin. But the bird said nothing. She watched. She breathed. But the music within her had vanished, as if flown away with the storm that changed everything. The storm that broke the sky. No one knew what had happened. Some said she had flown, too close to the hunter's fire. Others whispered that she had seen something unspeakable, far beyond the trees. Whatever it was, she returned different, quiet, heavy with silence. And in a forest made of song, silence is a strange thing. She did not resist it. She wore her silence like a cloak. But deep inside, the absence ached like an empty nest. The monk who listened differently, far, beneath the trees, where moss grew thick and the earth smelled of rain, an old monk walked his morning path. He carried no staff, no prayer beads, only a straw broom and a small cloth satchel of millet seeds, which he scattered for the birds, with each step. One morning, As he passed beneath the silent branch, the bird looked down at him. He paused, looked up. "You don't sing anymore," he said softly, as if addressing the morning fog. The bird tilted her head, but made no sound. "That's all right," he continued. "Even silence has a sound." He placed a few seeds gently on the stone and walked on. The next morning, he returned. Same path, same seeds, same silence. On the seventh day, the bird spoke, not a song, but a whisper. "I forgot how." The monk smiled. "No, you just stopped needing to. Why we go?" Quiet in psychology, silence is one of trauma's oldest responses. When the body experiences overwhelm, whether through violence, grief, abandonment, or emotional neglect, it often shuts down. We call this freeze. The nervous system retreats inward, conserving energy, shielding the heart. In children, this can look like withdrawn behavior. In adults, it often becomes emotional numbness, the inability to feel joy, a disconnection from purpose, a voice that forgets its own tone. The bird did not lose her song, she buried it, because sometimes forgetting is how we survive. Zen parable. The bell that waited. There is a Zen story of a temple bell that stopped ringing. It sat in a courtyard for years, unmoved. When asked why, the abbot replied, "Because no one has asked it kindly." This is how we must approach our own voice, not by forcing it, not by yelling louder, but by waiting beside it with kindness. The monk did not demand the bird to sing. He offered seed, presence, trust, and that is where healing begins. The return of the sound. The bird did not sing the next day, nor the next, but she began to hum, softly, shakily, like a melody remembered in pieces. She listened more. She leaned into the breeze. She let the sounds of the forest pass through her feathers like wind through chimes. Then one dawn, when the mist clung low and the monk scattered millet with a yawn, she opened her beak and let a note fly. It was small, barely more than breath, but it carried something sacred. The monk stopped, closed his eyes, and smiled. Your voice. To you may not be a bird, but perhaps you have forgotten your own song, not your literal voice, but the part of you that once dreamed. The laugh that came easily, the hope that danced uninvited, the expression that didn't second-guess itself, trauma, burnout, disappointment. All these can muffle us. We adapt. We become quiet. And after a while, silence begins to feel like safety. But it is not who we are. You still have a voice, even if it trembles, even if it only hums in the dark. Buddha's words on the middle. Way in the Sutta Nipata, the Buddha says, not too tight, not too loose, like the string of a lute that plays truly. This is the middle way. You do not force healing. You do not abandon it. You sit beside your silence with compassion. You hold space for sound to return when it's ready. Healing through sound and stillness. In somatic therapy, healing often begins with resonance. Sometimes a client does not need words. They need vibration, tone, hum, a hand on the back, a breath in sync. The monk offered this, not advice, not theology, just presence. Healing is not performance, it is remembering. Your voice may come back slowly, a word, a whisper, a note. But it will come, because it never truly left. Sleep, reflection, listening for the song. Within tonight, lie down in stillness. Place a hand gently on your throat, not to speak, just to feel. Breathe in, breathe out, ask quietly, what have I stopped saying? What sound still lives inside me, waiting to return? Now hum, just a low, gentle hum, not for anyone else, just for your own being. Let your body remember what it feels like to vibrate. You are not empty. You are not broken. You are a song that has not finished. You are the bird remembering the sky. Story 8. The Pebble of Control. The river was never the same 2 days in a row. Some days it whispered softly, curling around the rocks with the grace of silk. Other days it rushed like a wild horse, tearing through the banks, dragging fallen branches and forgotten sandals with it. At the bend where the current softened, there sat a boy. Every day he arrived with his small bundle, a flask, a folded cloth, and a single smooth pebble. He carried that pebble everywhere, clutching it tightly in his palm, rubbing it between his fingers until the skin beneath grew red and polished. The villagers said the boy was strange, that he talked to the river, that he never smiled, that he never let go of the stone. But they didn't know what the pebble meant. The pebble's origin. The boy had found the pebble the day after the flood. That spring, the river had overflown, swollen by snowmelt, furious with rain. It rose without warning, swallowing homes, trees, livestock, memories. His house was among those taken, and with it, his mother. The next morning, wandering the shattered riverbank in a daze, he stepped barefoot on something smooth. It was a pebble, perfectly oval, cool to the touch, strangely heavy for its size. He picked it up and never let it go. The monk who sat across the river. Across the bend, there lived a monk in a tiny hut made of bamboo and mud. He had no shrine, no disciples, no robes. Only a walking stick and a laugh that came like thunder during spring. The villagers loved him, but found him unpredictable. He once poured tea into a boot. He painted calligraphy with his eyes closed. He slept on rooftops when the nights were too beautiful. But he noticed the boy, and more importantly, he noticed the pebble. An invitation. One morning, the monk walked barefoot through the shallows until he stood just 10 paces from the boy. "May I sit?" he asked. The boy nodded, eyes fixed on the river. They sat together for a long while, saying nothing. Then the monk asked, "Does the stone keep the water away?" The boy blinked. "No." "Does it bring your mother back?" "No." "Does it help you forget?" The boy's fingers tightened. "No. But if I let it go, I'll forget what I need to remember." The monk nodded. "And if you never let it go, you might forget how to open your hand." The illusion of control is the illusion we cling to when life feels too big. The pebble was not magic, but to the boy, it was certainty, a weight that reminded him of something, even if that something hurt. In trauma recovery, we call this symbolic control, gripping objects, routines, patterns to feel safe, even when they no longer serve us. The boy could not stop the river, so he held the stone, because holding gave him a story. I am not powerless. Zen, teaching, the grasping mind. There's a Zen story of a monkey who reached into a jar of rice, his fist closed around the food, but when he tried to pull his hand out, it was stuck. If he let go, he'd be free, but he wouldn't, because grasping feels like security, even when it traps us. The boy's pebble was no different. It was not the river that kept him bound. It was the grip. Letting go is not forgetting. The monk returned each morning. He never asked the boy to throw the pebble away. Instead, he would offer a second stone, slightly different each time. One was jagged, one was light as ash, one was shaped like a heart. The boy always shook his head. One day, the monk brought no stone, only a question. What if you placed it beside you just for one moment? The boy hesitated. Then slowly, he opened his hand and set the pebble on the earth. The world didn't end. The river still flowed. The memory did not vanish, but something inside him softened. The first sleep. Without the pebble. That night, for the first time in 2 years, the boy slept without the pebble in his palm. His fingers twitched. His dreams wandered. He woke before dawn, startled, but breathing easier. He looked at his hand. Empty, alive. And for the first time, he walked to the river without the stone. Your pebble, to you, dear listener, may carry your own pebble, not in your hand, perhaps, but in your habits, your defensiveness, your constant planning, your refusal to rest. It may be a job title, a relationship that no longer feels alive, a belief about who you must be, a ritual that once saved you, but now silently suffocates. Letting go doesn't mean abandoning. It means loosening. It means trusting the water more than the stone. Buddha's wisdom on surrender in the Dhammapada, the Buddha says, as the wind cannot shake a mountain, so too does calm wisdom not tremble in chaos. The river will rise. The flood will come. But you are not the flood. You are the sky that holds it. Your peace does not come from gripping. It comes from grounding. Psychological healing, surrendering, without losing self. Therapists today speak of control, strategies, behaviors meant to manage pain. These include overworking, perfectionism, compulsive routines. They begin as coping tools, but if left unexamined, they become prisons. The boy's healing began not in throwing away the pebble, but in seeing that he had a choice. He learned that memory does not live in objects. It lives in presence, in feeling, in connection, and in trust that he could survive without holding on so tightly. Sleep meditation. Loosening the grip tonight, lie still. Hold one hand in the other, gently. Notice if you're clenching. Breathe into your palms. Now ask, what have I been holding too tightly? What would happen if I set it down just for tonight? You do not need to fix it. You do not need to forget. Just soften. Breathe in. I can release. Breathe out. I am still whole. Let the current move through you. Let the river speak. And when morning comes, you may pick up the pebble again, or you may leave it. Either way, you are free. Story 9. Where the river doesn't rush. There is a place where the river forgets to rush. It lies deep in the mountains, past the cedar groves and above the terraced fields, where farmers bow to the earth with every sunrise. You will not find it on any map. You cannot reach it quickly. You must walk and walk until your footsteps grow quieter than your breath. There, the river widens. Not deep, not loud. It moves like time when no one is looking. They call it the sitting water. And those who reach it do not drink, nor wash, nor swim. They simply sit, like the river does, and remember how to stop. The man who couldn't be still one summer, a merchant arrived in the mountains. He was not old, but his body moved. like it had forgotten how to rest. His eyes darted. His hands never stilled. Even in sleep, his breath was impatient, as if chasing something just beyond reach. He had travelled far, seeking peace, or perhaps permission to collapse. He had heard rumours of a river that healed the soul, not by offering answers, but by asking none. When he finally found it, he stood at the edge, unsure. No shrine, he murmured. No chance, no monk, only the river replied, curling slowly around a stone. He sat, stiff at first, then heavier, then still. The truth beneath stillness, the merchant didn't understand the pain in his chest. He had lived by momentum, always moving, solving, achieving. His mind, a room of ticking clocks. His days, a ledger of output and efficiency. But in stillness, something broke open. Grief, old exhaustion. Memories he had packed away in the dark. Tears rose without story, and the river did not flinch. It held space the way only something truly still can do. Zen koan, the stream that forgot to flow. There is a Zen koan that says, a student asked, "What is the way?" The master replied, "Walk on." The student said, "But I am tired." The master said, "Then be still." Stillness is not always the end of a path. Sometimes it is the path, but we fear it, because in stillness we must meet ourselves, not the curated self, not the productive self, but the raw, soft, grieving, questioning self. The merchant had never met that self, not until the river introduced them. Psychological insight. The addiction to movement. In trauma psychology, there is a pattern called fleeing forward. It's when the body and mind keep moving, emotionally, professionally, socially, not because we're thriving, but because we're avoiding. Avoiding stillness, avoiding grief, avoiding the memory of a time when stopping felt dangerous. We stay busy not because we love the work, but because we fear the silence that follows. The merchant had mistaken restlessness for purpose. The river showed him the difference. The monk who sat by the water on. The third day, the merchant noticed a monk sitting a few stones away. He wore no robes. His head was not shaved, but his breath was stiller than the river. They didn't speak, until one dusk, the merchant finally asked, "Why does this place feel so heavy?" The monk replied, "Because you're carrying too much, and this is the first place you've paused long enough to notice." The merchant looked down. His hands trembled. "Am I allowed to stop?" The monk smiled. "You are not only allowed, you are designed to." Buddha's teaching on non-striving. In the Majjhima Nikaya, the Buddha said, "Do not strive after what is already yours." Peace is not a reward. It is not something you earn after doing enough, fixing enough, becoming enough. It is your birthright, but you must remember it. The river is not trying to be a river. It simply is. You too do not need to try to be. You only need to be, and to let that be enough. The shift on. The fifth day, the merchant stopped counting time. He let his shoes remain untied. He did not check his reflection. He breathed with his belly. He no longer needed the river to fix him. He simply let it teach him how not to run. And when he finally stood to leave, he did not feel healed. He felt real. It was enough. You, who may not sit, dear listener, you may not have a river nearby, but you likely have the ache of movement, the urge to check, to respond, to scroll, to plan. You may feel guilty when you rest, like you must earn stillness, like slowing down is laziness. But that is not truth. That is programming. Your body was born to pause. Your mind longs for quiet. Your heart, beneath the noise, knows this. Let yourself sit beside your own inner river. Modern mindfulness. Doing nothing is doing something. In mindfulness training, there's a phrase. Don't just do something. Sit there. It sounds ironic, but it holds wisdom. Stillness is not passivity. It is presence. When we stop rushing, we make room. For clarity to emerge, for grief to move through, for the nervous system to recalibrate. The merchant didn't waste time by sitting. He re-entered his own time, and that is always sacred. Sleep meditation. Where you stop chasing, tonight before sleep, sit for just 1 minute. No phone, no music, no intention. Breathe. Feel the bed beneath you. Let your shoulders drop. Ask gently, where in my life am I still rushing? What part of me is begging to rest? Breathe in. I give myself permission. Breathe out. I do not need to chase. Let this moment be your river. Let this silence hold you. You do not need to go anywhere. You have already arrived. Story 10. The breath of a dying star. Long before humans told stories, before temples or oceans or language, there were stars. And every star, no matter how radiant, no matter how large, no matter how worshipped from afar, must one day collapse, not from failure, not from mistake, but from the weight of its own light. The dying of a star is not an explosion, it is a surrender. The old astronomer, in a remote observatory nestled in the Himalayas, an old monk once lived, not among scrolls or sutras, but among telescopes. He had left the monastery years ago saying only, "The Buddha taught the nature of impermanence. I want to witness it in motion," and so he climbed. Above the clouds, above the politics of enlightenment, above even the noise of thought. And he watched stars. He charted their births and deaths, their subtle pulsing, the slow vanishing of ancient light into coldness. And at night, he whispered to the sky, "Teach me how to die." The young seeker one winter, a young seeker found the observatory. He was gaunt with hunger, not for food, but for truth. He had studied scriptures, memorized mantras, meditated until his knees bled, and yet he still feared the void, still flinched at the word death, still couldn't bear the silence of not knowing. The old monk gave him no answers, only warm tea, and silence and the telescope. "Look," he said. "Tell me what you see." The boy peered. Through the eyepiece, squinting, a star, dimming, flickering. "Yes," the monk nodded. "She's dying. And do you feel any fear from her?" The boy looked up. "No, only stillness." The monk smiled. "Then perhaps she knows something we don't. The ego and the fear of disappearance, we humans fear endings, because we've spent our lives constructing an I. I am this role. I am this story. I am what I've done, who I've lost, how I'm seen. But when the body begins to fade, when the mind slows, when the illusion of control thins like a dying flame, we panic. Who are we? Without our name, without memory, without witness? The star, however, does not resist. It burns, it surrenders, it becomes something else. Zen. Teaching, the finger and the moon. In Zen, there's a saying, the finger pointing to the moon is not the moon. Our identity, our ego, is the finger, useful, directional, but never the whole truth. The boy believed he needed to define himself, to prove something, to reach enlightenment as a fixed destination. But the monk showed him the sky, not as escape, but as mirror. You're not separate, he said. You are not looking at the stars. You are one. The collapse into stillness weeks passed. The boy began to speak less. He slept under stars. He journaled until the words dissolved into drawings. One night, he woke to the quiet cry of the monk's breath, slow, irregular. The old man was seated, looking through the telescope. She's gone, he said softly. Who? Shada, the one you saw on your first night. He smiled, not with grief, but with awe. I watched her for 20 years. She was older than the Himalayas, and tonight she exhaled her last breath. They sat in silence. Then the boy whispered, Where did she go? The monk replied, Everywhere. Buddhas, words on death in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, the Buddha said, all compound things are subject to vanish. Strive earnestly, with mindfulness. Death is not failure. It is the final unfolding. The body is borrowed. The breath is borrowed. Even thought is a traveler. When we stop resisting impermanence, we become intimate with reality. The monk understood this. He didn't fear death. He watched it with reverence, like watching dusk swallow the edge of the sky. Psychological reflection, death as identity, surrender in psychology. Fear of death is often rooted in ego dissolution, the terror of losing our constructed self. But in spiritual therapy, there is a healing practice, imaginal death meditation. You imagine yourself dying, not to frighten, but to soften, to shed the layers, to ask, what remains when I no longer perform? It is not nothing. What remains is vastness, silence, compassion, the breath of the star echoing inside you. The boy's transformation. Months passed. The boy no longer feared the void. He no longer clung to enlightenment as a destination. He laughed more, cried more, slept deeply. One morning the monk died, peacefully, in his chair, his face turned toward the telescope. The boy found a note tucked under his teacup. Stars do not vanish. They return, in breath, in wind, in you. You, the fading light, you too may fear endings, of love, of identity, of life itself. But let this truth touch you gently. All things pass, and in their passing, they become something new. You are not a static self. You are not your achievements. You are not your name. You are a breath in the great exhale of the cosmos. You are allowed to soften, to surrender, to return. Sleep meditation. Becoming the star tonight. Before sleep, lie in darkness. Feel your breath. Visualize a star far away, flickering its last light, not in sadness, in offering. Let your breath mirror hers. Inhale. I am not afraid. Exhale. I return to the whole. Feel yourself dissolve, not disappear, but expand. You are not gone. You are light that knows how to rest. You are the breath of a dying star, gentle, endless, and free. Story 11. When the mirror cried. There was a mirror in the old monastery. It hung in a quiet corridor between the library and the meditation hall, an odd place for such a thing. No one ever used it. There were no combs, no cosmetics, no reason to look. And yet the mirror remained. It was tall, framed in black bamboo, its surface slightly clouded with time. It did not shine, it did not flatter, it simply reflected. And for decades, the monks passed by without noticing it, until the day someone saw it cry. The one who saw, she was not a monk. She was a traveler, silent, soaked by monsoon, wrapped in a shawl that smelled of salt and memory. She had come not to find answers, but to escape them. Grief hung around her like steam. They gave her shelter. She walked the halls like a ghost, nodding politely, asking for nothing. Until one dawn, as candles flickered low, she stood before the mirror and froze. At first, she thought it was rain. But the mirror was wet on the inside. 2 small streaks trailed down its face. Not cracks, not fog, but tears. She wiped her own eyes. They were dry, and for the first time in months, she whispered, "I see you." The mirror's purpose word spread among the monks, though no one spoke of it loudly. The mirror had responded. The abbot, old and soft-spoken, approached it one evening with incense. He bowed, waited, said nothing. Later, when asked what he saw, he replied, "The mirror does not show faces. It shows the part of us that has been waiting to be seen, the mask we wear to ourselves. Most of us have never truly looked at our reflection, not through the lens of comparison, not for makeup or grooming, but through the eyes of acceptance. We flinch from mirrors when they reflect the parts we hide: shame, regret, aging, emotional scars. We pretend we're okay. We perform. We smile when we want to scream. But the body remembers, and the mirror, when approached with silence, remembers too. Zen teaching, seeing clearly in the platform. Sutra, the 6th patriarch Huineng said, "The true mirror is empty and still, reflecting all things without clinging." The mirror is not meant to judge. It reveals, without opinion, without exaggeration. When the woman stood before it, what she saw was not her face, but her grief, her fatigue, her truth. And for the first time, she did not run. The visitor's story, she had lost her daughter 3 winters ago. Sudden illness, the kind that steals breath in a matter of nights. Since then, she had carried on, paid bills, cooked, sent emails. She even laughed sometimes, but she never cried. Because if she cried, she feared the world would crumble. And so her smile became armor, her sleep shallow, her reflection avoided, until the mirror cried for her, and her knees buckled, and she let go. Modern psychology, emotional repression, in trauma therapy, this is known as emotional suppression, the act of avoiding or minimizing painful emotions to stay functional. It's adaptive. It helps us survive, but over time, it costs us. Symptoms emerge: chronic fatigue, anxiety without name, emotional numbness, disconnection from self and others. The nervous system, when denied release, holds the grief like a stone. But the moment we see ourselves, truly, gently, without fixing, healing begins. The abbot's guidance. He found her sitting before the mirror the next morning, eyes swollen. He said nothing at first, only poured warm tea. Then he asked, "What did you see?" "Myself," she whispered. But not the self I show the world. The one behind it. He nodded. Good. That self is the one that can heal. She hesitated. But I don't like what I saw. He smiled. That is not the mirror's fault. You've only just met her. Be kind. She's been waiting a long time. Buddhist view of the true self in the Buddhist tradition, the self is a shifting illusion, a construct, necessary but not fixed. But beneath the layers of thought, story, and identity, there is a quieter presence. Some call it Buddha nature. Some call it awareness. Some simply call it home. When you meet your own eyes without judgment, you touch that place. You realize, I am not my failure. I am not my grief. I am not my mask. You are what sees, what witnesses, what allows. The mirror's silence. The woman stayed at the monastery for many weeks. She never touched the mirror again, but each morning she sat before it, not to look, but to be looked at. One evening, she brought a flower and placed it at its base. I forgive you, she said. She wasn't sure if she meant the mirror, herself, or the universe, but it didn't matter. Forgiveness had begun. You, the mirror, and the unseen you too, may avoid your reflection, not because of vanity, but because of the parts of you that are still grieving. Perhaps the part that feels like a burden, the one that didn't speak up, the version of you that failed, or was abandoned, or never felt enough. You cannot heal by hiding from yourself, but you can begin by sitting, softly, gently, and letting your inner mirror weep, if it needs to. Sleep meditation. Seeing without judgment tonight. Before sleep, sit in low light. Find a mirror, any size. Look not at your features, but into your eyes. Don't fix, don't assess. Just ask, what part of me is longing to be seen? Can I sit with it, even if it hurts? Then close your eyes. Breathe in. I allow. Breathe out. I accept. Let the tears come, if they do, or let the stillness hold you. You are not broken. You are simply learning to see. Story 12. The road that led nowhere. There was a road in the hills that no one finished. It was old, older than the monastery, older than the farmers' paths, older even than the village legends. It wound up the spine of the mountain like a question that had long forgotten its answer. Covered in moss, bordered by wind-worn stones, it beckoned and it disappeared. Many walked it. None returned with clarity. Some said it ended in a cliff. Others claimed it looped endlessly in silence. But there was one truth that all agreed upon. It never led anywhere. And that, curiously, was why the monk walked it every week. The monk who didn't seek a rival, he was not famous, not the kind who gave sermons or received guests. He lived in a hut near the lotus pond, where frogs sang louder than gongs. Each week he woke, before dawn, lit a single candle, packed nothing, and walked the path to nowhere. He didn't check the time. He didn't bring prayer beads. He didn't even wear shoes. When asked why, he simply replied, "Because I forget who I am when I don't." The young man who wanted answers one season. A young man came to the monastery in search of a teacher. He had tried everything, read scriptures, practiced yoga, traveled far, filled journals with questions he couldn't bear to share. Still, something felt missing. He followed the monk one morning, hoping for wisdom. After hours of walking in silence, he finally asked, "Where does this road go?" The monk smiled. "I've never arrived." The young man frowned. "Then why walk it?" The monk touched his chest. "Because sometimes the walking undoes what the world has built inside me. The addiction to arrival. We are taught to chase endpoints, finish school, get the job, find the partner, secure the home, attain the recognition, achieve the enlightenment. We chase, hoping arrival will quiet the ache, but the ache does not fear incompletion. It fears emptiness, and so we fill it with motion, even when the path doesn't need to go anywhere. Zen koan, the traveler and the Circle A traveler, once asked a Zen master, "Where does your path lead?" The master drew a perfect circle in the dirt and said, "It leads back to the step you're standing on." The traveler laughed. The master did not. In Zen, the way is not linear, it is spiral, it is present, it is this breath, not the next destination. The monk walked not to get somewhere, but to remember what it means to walk. The road that transformed. Over time, the young man began to join the monk weekly. He stopped asking questions. He stopped checking the sun's position. He stopped needing to get something out of it. Instead, he noticed how his breath slowed, how the wind had a rhythm, how his mind softened just by being without agenda. One morning, he realized something. He no longer needed the path to go somewhere. It was enough that it existed. Modern psychology, the illusion of linear healing, contemporary culture teaches us to think of healing as a staircase. Step 1, identify the pain. Step 2, work on it. Step 3, reach better. Step 4, never feel that pain again. But real healing is not linear. It revisits, it spirals, it pauses, weeps, forgets, forgives, begins again. Therapists often say, progress isn't always forward. Sometimes it's deeper. The road to nowhere taught this. Because nowhere was actually now here. The cliff that wasn't a dead end one day, the young man reached a clearing where the path appeared to stop. It overlooked a wide valley, the kind that silences you without effort. He turned to the monk. "Is this the end?" The monk chuckled. "Only if you stop walking." "But there's nothing beyond this." "There never was," the monk said, "and that's the lesson." The boy looked confused. "I don't understand." "You're not meant to," the monk replied. "You're meant to feel it." And with that, he sat on the edge and closed his eyes. The boy sat beside him, and for the first time in years, he stopped needing to know. Buddha's silence and the unanswered. The Pali Canon, there's a moment when someone asks the Buddha, "What happens after death? Is the soul eternal?" The Buddha remains silent, not because he doesn't know, but because the question pulls the seeker away from the present moment. The silence is the teaching. The unanswered is the answer, just like the path to nowhere. You, and the road you too, may be walking a path that doesn't make sense right now. A grief that won't resolve, a season of life without clarity, a job that feels directionless, a healing process that repeats itself. You may be asking, "When will I arrive?" Let this be your gentle reminder. Arrival is not always forward. Sometimes it is stillness. Sometimes it is your breath returning to your body after years of leaving it behind. You are not lost. You are simply on the path, and that is enough. Sleep meditation. Sitting with the not knowing tonight. Lie down. Place one hand on your belly. Feel the rise and fall, like a traveler on a road with no map. Close your eyes. Ask gently, can I let go of needing to arrive? What happens if I trust the road, even if I don't know where it goes? Breathe in. I walk without force. Breathe out. I arrive in presence. Let the mind soften. Let the path curve where it will. Let the need to explain fall like dust from your shoulders. The road may lead nowhere, but your heart, your being knows the way. Story 13. No one at the gate. There was a gate that no one guarded. It stood at the edge of the temple grounds, facing east, where the sun spilled in like prayer each morning. Weathered wood, patched in places with iron, it bore no lock and no sign. It opened with a whisper and closed with a sigh. Most entered through the main hall, past the incense burners and the old bell. But occasionally, wanderers found the gate. They paused. They waited. They looked around for someone, anyone, to acknowledge their presence. But no one came. The man who waited. One day, a man arrived at the gate, dusty from travel and cracked with hunger, not of the body, but of being seen. He had climbed mountains to reach this temple, not because he believed in enlightenment, but because he believed someone there might tell him who he was. He stood at the gate for hours. Surely someone would greet him, surely a monk, a novice, a caretaker, someone. But the wind passed. Trees whispered, and the gate remained unattended. He knocked. No answer. He called out. Only silence replied. The need to be welcomed. Eventually, the abbot, passing through the garden, noticed the man through the trees. Why don't you come in? He asked, voice light as mist. There was no one at the gate, the man replied, with a hint of resentment. The abbot nodded. Ah, that gate has always been that way. But how do people know they belong? The abbot smiled. They don't. They decide they do. The man frowned. Isn't someone supposed to say, you may enter? No, the abbot said softly. You are the one you've been waiting for. The illusion of permission. We spend much of life at invisible gates, waiting to be chosen, waiting to be told we're enough, waiting to be seen before we see ourselves. We seek validation from parents, partners, mentors, strangers online. A sign, a nod, a name tag that says, you have value. But Zen invites us to a deeper truth. There is no gatekeeper. There is only your own willingness to enter. The man waited not because the gate was locked, but because he still believed he needed approval to pass through. Zen koan, the gateless gate. There is a famous Zen text called the Mumonkan, the gateless gate. One of its central koans reads, a monk asked Master Zhaozhou, does a dog have Buddha nature? Zhaozhou replied, Mu. Mu means nothing, but not in the nihilistic sense. It means let go of the question itself. The point is not to find an answer. The point is to dissolve the illusion that there's someone keeping you out. The gate was never locked. It was never even closed. The mirror of identity. The man entered the temple at last, but he remained restless. He asked to sweep the steps, hoping someone would thank him. He left gifts by the altar, hoping someone would praise him. He meditated longer than the others, hoping someone would notice, but no one commented. No nods, no acknowledgement, only shared silence, only presence. At first, it stung. Then it confused him. Then, one evening, alone before the moonlit pond, he broke down. "Don't I matter?" he whispered to the sky. And the water, still as glass, whispered back with reflection alone. Modern psychology, the hungry self in psychology, this is called externalized identity. When self-worth is built on feedback, titles, or roles, the self becomes fragile, dependent on being mirrored. When the mirror vanishes, we panic. We ask, do I exist if no one sees me? Am I worthy if no one says so? The healing begins not in finding a new audience, but in becoming the one who witnesses yourself. The monks did not ignore the man. They simply trusted that he would, in time, stop waiting to be seen and begin seeing. The abbot's teaching one morning. The abbot invited the man to sit beside him under the plum tree. "You've been here for 33 days, he said. "What have you found?" The man looked down. "No one has told me who I am." The abbot chuckled. "Good. That's the first truth." The man hesitated. "Then how will I know?" The abbot handed him a bowl of water. "Look." He gazed into it, saw his own face. "Now stir it," said the abbot. He did. His reflection vanished. "That," the abbot said, "is what others' opinions do to you. But when the mind is still, you remember your shape." Buddha's insight. You are not the labels. The Buddha once said, "Just as a flame does not cling to the candle, you must not cling to name or form." Who you are is not your job, not your story, not your praise or your shame. Who you are is presence, not something seen, but something that sees. The man began to let go of needing to be impressive, of needing to be praised, of needing someone at the gate. And in that letting go, he became free, you and the invisible gate. Perhaps you too are standing at some gate, waiting for someone to say, "I love you," waiting for a dream to validate your worth, waiting for the world to grant you permission to rest, to create, to be. Let this truth arrive like morning light. There is no one at the gate, and that is the blessing. You are not being ignored. You are being invited to step in by your own hand. You do not need applause to begin. You do not need evidence to be real. You need only your breath and your willingness to walk forward. Sleep meditation, crossing without waiting. Tonight, close your eyes. Visualize a gate before you. It is not locked. No one stands beside it. The wood is warm. The path beyond is quiet. Now ask, what have I been waiting for? Who am I hoping will tell me I'm enough? Then take a breath and step through. Breathe in. I am allowed. Breathe out. I am already inside. Let the need to be seen dissolve. You are not at the threshold. You are home. Story 14. The Cloud and the Fire. A cloud drifted over the temple valley, soft and grey. It didn't weep. It didn't rage. It simply hovered, unwilling to move, unwilling to break. Below, fires burned, in hearths, in lanterns, in hearts, and somewhere, between sky and earth, between weight and warmth, between silence and flicker, sat a woman who no longer knew which one she was. The woman who was. Both, she had come to the monastery after losing what she called everything. A marriage, a career, a version of herself she could no longer believe in. She spoke softly, moved like vapor, Yet behind her eyes, something burned, not with rage, but with the steady heat of pain too long held. When asked how she felt, she replied, "Like a fire trapped inside a cloud." The abbot paused when he heard that. He smiled, not with amusement, but recognition. "Yes," he said, "that is a real thing." The inner split each morning, she would sit in the zendo, her posture still, her gaze lowered. On the outside, a cloud, calm, float-like, untouchable. But inside, she churned, regret, unspoken anger, fear of softness, the sharp echo of decisions she couldn't undo, no one knew. That's how it often is with those who suffer silently. They carry fire wrapped in mist. Zen teaching, holding the opposites. A student once asked the master, "How can I be angry and calm at the same time?" The master pointed to the mountain. "It is both still and burning." In Zen, we do not divide things into good and bad, light and dark. We see both. We hold the opposites, not to resolve them, but to become spacious enough that they can coexist. The cloud does not stop being a cloud because it holds fire. And the fire does not lose its truth because it lives within mist. The fire that asked to be. Felt one day, during walking meditation, the woman stopped. She clutched her chest. Tears welled, uninvited. A small, dry sob escaped, more wind than sound. The young novice approached gently. "Are you hurt?" "No," she whispered. "I'm finally feeling." The fire had spoken. It didn't want to destroy. It just wanted to be known. Modern psychology. Emotional disintegration in trauma work. There's a state known as emotional disintegration, when contradictory feelings rise together and the mind doesn't know what to do. Love and hate, peace and panic, relief and guilt. These are not signs of madness. They are the psyche trying to heal, trying to say, "I am more than one thing." The woman had hidden the fire to appear calm, and hidden the cloud to appear strong. But healing asked her to be both, not either. The ceremony of water and flame. The abbot, sensing her readiness, invited her to a private ceremony. He prepared 2 bowls, one filled with water from the temple stream, the other containing a small ember taken from the meditation hall's fire pot. He placed both before her. "Choose one," he said. She hesitated. "If I choose fire, I burn. If I choose water, I vanish." The abbot bowed. "Then choose both." She did. And as she placed the ember gently into the bowl of water, a soft hiss rose, a single thread of steam curled upward, and for a brief moment she smiled. The steam that rose later, she wrote in her journal. "I am not the cloud. I am not the fire. I am the steam that rises when the two meet. I am what happens when the heart allows all of itself to exist. This is integration, not perfection, not purity, but permission." The steam did not last, but it changed the air, just as allowing her contradictions to meet changed her. She walked lighter after that, still quiet, still strong, but not hiding anymore. Buddha's words on holding paradox. In the Sutta Nipata, the Buddha said, "Just as the lotus grows in muddy water, yet remains unstained, so too does the awakened one dwell in the world, yet beyond clinging." To be human is to feel the mud and the bloom, the cloud and the flame, the clarity and the chaos. You are not meant to be one thing, you are meant to be here, whole, you, the meeting point. Perhaps you too feel torn. Maybe you are calm on the outside, yet screaming within. Maybe you are kind, but exhausted. Maybe you are grateful, but grieving. You don't have to pick one. Let them meet. Let the fire say, I'm alive. Let the cloud say, I'm here. And let the steam rise, wordless and true. Sleep meditation, letting your contradictions breathe. Tonight, sit quietly. Breathe in. Notice any fire, tightness, restlessness, heat in the chest. Breathe out. Notice any cloud, numbness, heaviness, confusion. Now, ask gently, can I allow both? Place one hand on your heart, one on your belly. Breathe in. I am the space for all of this. Breathe out. I do not need to resolve. I need to receive. Let the opposites touch. Let the steam rise. You are not broken. You are whole in your contradiction. Story 15. Happiness without a name. They asked him once, "Are you happy?" The old gardener paused, wiped sweat from his brow, and smiled, not with joy, but with stillness. He looked up from the rows of lettuce and ginger and simply said, "I'm not sure, but the soil feels warm today." They waited for more. A story, a confession, a laugh. He returned to his planting, and somehow they understood. Happiness had nothing to do with how he felt, and everything to do with how he lived. The seeker of names a traveler had wandered for years, notebook in hand, asking strangers the same question. What makes you happy? He collected answers like relics. Success, being understood. Freedom, my children. Peace of mind. But the more he wrote, the less he felt. The more he sought the definition of happiness, the more it slipped away. So when he came to the garden monastery, he asked the old gardener the same question. Are you happy? And received a silence that was deeper than any answer he'd ever recorded. The illusion of the label, we believe happiness is something we must find, define, then protect. We search for it in accomplishments, relationships, retreats, and rituals. We read about it, post about it, try to measure it with metrics and mindfulness apps. But happiness is not a thing. It is a moment, a movement, a breath, unburdened by striving. The traveler's notebook was filled with ideas, but it had no room for the unspoken. The gardener did not define happiness. He embodied it. Zen teaching. The finger and the moon. Again. In Zen, the same parable returns often, because we keep forgetting. The finger pointing at the moon is not the moon. Our words about joy are not joy. Our theories about peace are not peace. The more we chase the name, the further we drift from the experience. The gardener never once said he was happy. He just smelled the mint before he picked it. He just hummed as he dug into the earth. He just noticed how the cabbage turned its face to the sun. That was enough. The traveler's crisis. That evening, the traveler sat alone by the koi pond. He reread every page of his notebook. Each entry was eloquent, precise, thoughtful, but something gnawed at him. He closed the book. He realized he had spent years collecting what happiness meant to others, and never once listened for what it might feel like within himself. He didn't know how to be. He only knew how to chase. Modern psychology, the paradox of happiness. In positive psychology, researchers call it the happiness trap. The more we prioritize being happy as a goal, the more pressure we put on ourselves when we feel anything else. This creates a subtle shame. Why can't I be happy like them? What's wrong with me if this moment isn't enough? Am I failing at joy? But happiness is not the absence of sadness. It is the full permission to be where you are, without resistance. The gardener understood this. When it rained, he pulled on his boots. When the lettuce failed, he replanted. He didn't require joy to be present to feel whole. The bowl of soup. The next morning, the traveller found a bowl of miso soup waiting outside his door. A small folded note sat beside it. Steam, taste, warmth. You don't need a word for it. He sipped the broth slowly. He did not write. He only sat and felt the warmth spread from tongue to throat, to belly. And in that moment, he didn't know if he was happy, but he knew he wasn't searching. Buddha's words, beyond happiness. The Buddha rarely used the word happiness. Instead, he spoke of liberation, of freedom from craving, of the peace that arises when we are no longer enslaved to desire. In the Dhammapada, he said, "There is no fire like passion, no shark like hatred, no snare like delusion, no river like craving. But those who live mindfully, they are truly free." Happiness, then, is not a goal. It is a byproduct of non-clinging. The traveller's last entry, he left the monastery weeks later. Before he departed, he tore the last pages from his notebook and tucked them under a stone near the garden. They read, "Today, I forgot to ask what happiness means. I forgot to define it. I simply walked the path to the compost pile, and it smelled rich with decay and future life. I wiped my hands on my pants and felt the sun on my back. I did not smile. I did not sigh. I just was. I think this is what they mean. You, and the unnamed joy you too may be chasing a name. The happy version of yourself. The idea that peace means smiling more. The belief that you must feel better to be doing life right. But pause. You are allowed to not know what happiness is. You are allowed to not name it. You are allowed to feel moments of breath, soup, wind, and tears. And let that be enough. Sleep meditation. Letting go of the name tonight. Sit quietly. Close your eyes. Think of a moment this week that felt warm, even if only for a second. Don't define it. Don't rate it. Just remember, a hand on your shoulder. The smell of coffee. The quiet when everyone else fell asleep. Now breathe in. I do not need to name it. Breathe out. I let it be. Let the need to be happy soften. You are not a definition. You are a life. And your life, however it feels tonight, is enough. Story 16. The thief who found stillness. The thief came not for gold. There was none to steal. No jeweled statues, no silk robes, no hidden chests, only rice bowls, meditation cushions, and candle stubs. He came for silence, though he didn't know it yet. His hands were calloused, his eyes restless. He had lived in the alleys of cities, beneath roofs not his own, fed by hunger more than hope. Guilt clung to him like the scent of ash in old clothes. That night, the temple was sleeping. Or so he thought. The abbot who left the door open when the thief slipped through the side gate, he noticed the lock was broken. No, not broken, unlocked, as if waiting. Inside, a candle flickered. Incense burned. A cup of tea sat, steaming, untouched. At the center of the zendo sat the abbot, cross-legged, still, eyes open. "You're late," the old man said. The thief froze. Sit," the abbot said gently, gesturing to the cushion across from him. The thief did not run. He didn't know why. Something in the old man's voice sounded like forgiveness, already given. The man who was not a monster. They sat in silence. The thief's breath was shallow, ready to flee. But the abbot did not speak, did not judge, did not move. Eventually, the thief whispered, "Why didn't you stop me?" "I'm not here to stop people," the abbot said. "I'm here to watch what moves them. And if I had taken something, then you would have left with one more burden." The thief looked down at his hands. "I'm not proud of who I am." "You are not who you are proud of," the abbot replied. "You are who sees the shame." Zen koan, the robe and the robber. There is an old Zen story of a thief who visited a monk's hut. Finding nothing to steal, the monk offered his robe. The thief ran. Later that night, the monk looked up at the moon and said, "Poor man, I wish I could have given him the moon." The point is not morality, it is freedom. The monk had nothing to lose because he was not attached. The thief, though he took nothing, left heavier because his story told him, "I am a taker, I do not deserve peace." The abbot knew this well. He had once been a thief too. The weight of the past. The thief slept outside the temple that night, not because he was asked to, but because he couldn't bring himself to enter fully. In the morning, he stayed, not out of devotion, but because no one asked him to leave. He swept floors, ate in silence, avoided mirrors. The monks did not question him, and that silence, day after day, undid him more than chains ever could. Modern psychology, shame and identity in therapy. We distinguish guilt from shame. Guilt says, "I did something bad." Shame says, "I am bad." Shame isolates. It convinces us we are unworthy of connection, that our past defines our future. But neuroscience shows the brain is malleable. The self is not fixed. Healing is possible when we feel seen without being condemned. The temple did not ask the thief to prove anything. It simply let him be, and in that being, something began to soften. The day he looked in the pondite was a morning like any other. He fetched water, poured tea, tended the herb garden. But as he passed the old pond, he caught his reflection. He stopped. For the first time, he didn't flinch. He didn't see a thief. He saw a man, breathing. The abbot's lesson. That evening, the abbot poured 2 cups of tea. He handed one to the former thief. "You have not stolen in months," he said. The man looked down. "I haven't needed to." "You never needed to," the abbot replied. "You needed stillness, but you thought it had to be taken." The man blinked. "And now?" The abbot smiled. "Now you are learning to receive." Buddha's teaching. No one is beyond the path. The Angulimala Sutta, the Buddha encounters a murderer, one feared by all. He does not run. He simply says, "I have stopped. Have you?" The man collapses in tears. He becomes a monk. He learns compassion. And when villagers try to punish him, the Buddha says, "A man who was lost is now found. Let him walk in peace." Zen is not about your past. It is about this breath, right now, right here. The man who no longer needed forgiveness. The thief stayed for many seasons. He never shaved his head, never wore robes, but he swept with reverence. He sat with stillness. He helped others who arrived lost. And one morning he walked through the same gate he had once entered. Not to run, not to hide, but to offer kindness in places he had once brought harm. He carried no shame, only stillness. You and the weight you carry. Perhaps you too have a past that still echoes. A mistake, a betrayal, a season of your life you cannot forgive. You do not need to erase it, but you can sit beside it. You can let stillness touch it. You can breathe into the belief that you are more than what you have done. You are not your history. You are the one learning to be free. Sleep meditation. Offering stillness to the wound tonight. Close your eyes. Place one hand on your chest. Think of something you regret. Not to punish, but to witness. Now say silently, I see you. You do not define me. I offer you stillness. Breathe in. I allow healing. Breathe out. I am not what I did. I am what I choose now. Let the shame rest. Let the gate open within you. You do not need to steal peace. It has always been yours. Story 17. The bamboo that bent. In the far corner of the monastery grounds, beyond the stone path and the lotus pond, stood a grove of bamboo. They were tall, not the tallest, but proud. They bent with the wind, danced in storms, and always returned to their upright shape. They swayed in unison, whispering secrets the wind carried from the mountains. They were never broken. And so, when the novice came to the edge of the grove, shaking with shame, he knelt beneath their arching silhouettes, not for shelter from the rain, but for shelter from himself. The novice who couldn't stop falling, he had arrived at the temple full of hope, bright eyes, eager breath, quick to bow and slower to question. He memorized chants, scrubbed stone steps, even practiced silence with a kind of intensity that made others smile. But he was fragile. Every mistake, burning rice, mispronouncing a sutra, falling asleep in zazen, struck him like a blade. His shoulders curved under invisible weight. One night, after being gently corrected by a senior monk, he vanished. They found him hours later in the bamboo grove, rain dripping from his robes, face buried in his palms. "I'm not strong enough," he whispered. The abbot stood beside him, silent, then said, "No one said strength means not bending. The nature of bamboo does not resist the wind. It bows, it yields, and because it yields, it survives storms that snap oak trees in half. Its strength is in its suppleness. In Zen, this is called fushizen, the natural way, the way that follows flow rather than force." The novice had confused rigidity with resilience. But the abbot knew. The strongest students are often those who fall early, because they learn to rise gently. The story of the cracked cup. The next morning, the abbot invited the novice for tea. He poured into a cup that had a thin crack down its side. "Isn't this broken?" the novice asked. "No," the abbot replied. "It's softened. It leaks." "Yes," he said, smiling. "But only slowly, so we must drink slowly." The novice looked confused. The abbot continued, "Everything in the world changes shape when it's lived in long enough. The mistake is trying to stay rigid. You are not failing. You are learning to bend." Modern psychology, resilience and flexibility. In therapy, resilience is not defined by toughness. It is the ability to recover, to adapt, to stay soft under pressure. Research shows that psychological flexibility, the ability to feel discomfort without reacting destructively, is one of the greatest indicators of mental health. Those who bend emotionally, who grieve, weep, rest, and release, are less likely to break. The novice wasn't weak. He was human, and his tears weren't signs of failure. They were the water the bamboo needed, the wind that returned weeks past. The novice continued his training, still sensitive, but softer. He made mistakes and apologized less. He laughed more. But one evening, a powerful storm blew across the mountains. It uprooted trees, cracked tiles, flooded paths. The monks took shelter, but the novice ran to the bamboo grove. He stood in the rain, watching the stalks bow so low they nearly kissed the earth. He wept, not from fear, but from recognition. They weren't resisting, they were receiving, and he whispered, "Thank you." Buddha's teaching, suffering and release. The Buddha taught, to resist what is to suffer twice. Pain is natural. Suffering is our clinging to how things should be. The bamboo does not suffer the wind. It welcomes it, not because it enjoys it, but because it knows it cannot control it. The novice began to learn. Let go of needing to be perfect. Let go of fearing collapse. Let go of clinging to approval and instead bow, breathe, rise again. The first teaching he gave years later, the novice became a teacher. He never shouted. He rarely corrected. He spent his mornings in the bamboo grove, sipping slow tea from the cracked cup. When students asked, "What is Zen?" he would walk to the grove and say, "Watch." And when the wind blew, they understood. You and the storm. Within you too may be in a storm. Perhaps your job is uncertain. Perhaps your relationships shake. Perhaps your inner world is shouting things you don't know how to hold. You may feel like bending means breaking. But listen, it does not. To bend is not to fail. To rest is not to quit. To cry is not to collapse. You are bamboo, alive, rooted, flexible. You are allowed to yield. You are allowed to pause, and you will rise. Sleep meditation, breathing like bamboo, tonight. Close your eyes. Imagine yourself in a bamboo grove. The wind rises, the stalks sway. You sway too. Now breathe in. I do not need to resist. Breathe out. I bend and I remain. Feel your spine soften, your shoulders loosen, your breath lengthen. You are not the storm. You are the one dancing within it. Let go of holding everything together. You are still whole. You are still here. Story 18. The cry behind laughter. He was the one who always made them laugh. Every temple has one. The jester, the light, the one who breaks the silence with perfectly timed words, the kind of man who can make a statue chuckle or a stone seem clever. He was not a monk, he was a cook. His name was Jun. Jun wore joy like a robe, loose, flowing, loud in color. His laugh was big, his voice warm, his eyes quick to crinkle at the corners. Novices loved him. Travelers stayed longer when he was near, but no one ever saw him sit. No one saw him cry, because Jun never did, at least not where anyone could see. The secret room behind the kitchen was a small storeroom. Rice, tea, old mats, broken bowls. And late at night, when the fire in the hearth had gone out, and the monks lay deep in zazen dreams, Jun would enter that room, close the door, and sit in the dark. He didn't chant. He didn't breathe in any special way. He just stopped. And some nights the stillness grew too wide, and from the center of it, a sound would emerge. Not laughter, something quieter, something heavier. A cry that had waited years to be heard. The abbot who heard it, the abbot, never knocked. He simply sat outside the storeroom, back to the door, hands resting on his knees. He said nothing. He waited. When the crying stopped, Jun opened the door. His eyes were red. His smile was absent. The abbot looked up, not with concern, but with kindness. "I heard you," he said. Jun looked down. "I didn't want to be heard." "I know," the abbot nodded. "But that's when it matters most." The mask of joy Jun sat beside him. "I don't know how to stop being the funny one," he admitted. "I don't want to burden people. I don't want them to worry." The abbot tilted his head. "Do you think joy and sorrow are separate?" Jun hesitated. "Aren't they?" The abbot picked up a pebble and tossed it into the pond. Ripples spread in all directions. "Your laughter," he said, "is not a lie, but perhaps it's a raft, and even a raft needs to rest on the shore sometimes." Zen koan, the smile that held rain. A master once smiled every morning without fail. When asked why, he replied, "Because I remember sadness each day, and it softens me." Laughter is not the absence of sorrow, it is its sibling. The issue is not the smile. The issue is forgetting what lives beneath it. Jun's laughter wasn't wrong. It simply needed somewhere to lay down its weight. Modern psychology. The humor shield in psychology, this is known as the humor mask. People who use comedy to deflect pain often come from histories of emotional neglect, trauma, or invisible grief. They lighten the room because no one ever made space for their darkness. They keep others comfortable because they learned discomfort was dangerous. They are praised for being resilient when in truth, they are quietly aching for permission to be human. Jun had been everyone's medicine, but he had never been the patient, the night he laughed and cried at once. One evening, the temple hosted a poetry night. Jun performed a short tale about a chicken who wanted to become a monk, filled with puns, exaggerated bows, and a final punchline so absurd the entire room erupted in laughter. But in that laughter, something cracked. Jun paused. His hands trembled, and with the room still smiling, he whispered, "I miss my brother." Silence fell like incense ash. He didn't explain. He didn't need to. The abbot placed a hand on his shoulder, and someone, just one, novice, began to cry too. The beginning of healing. From then on, Jun still laughed, still told stories, still teased the silent ones, but he also learned to sit. He began attending morning meditation, not to perform, but to listen. He wrote small poems and left them under bowls, tucked in shoes, slipped into pockets. "You don't have to smile today." The tears are welcome too. I'll laugh again, but not until I've listened. His joy became deeper, not louder, just truer. Buddha's teaching, the middle way of feeling. The Buddha once taught, pleasure is not evil, pain is not to be feared. Walk between them like a flute between breath and silence. This is the middle way, not numbness, not indulgence, but wholeness. The ability to let joy arise without guilt and sorrow without shame. Jun had learned the most radical truth of all, that laughter and tears could live in the same mouth and not cancel each other out, you and the laughter. You hold you too may be the one who always smiles, the strong one, the funny one, the light for others. But light does not mean empty, and being warm does not mean you do not feel the cold. Let yourself be held too. You don't have to make it okay. Sometimes, the medicine is not in cheering others up, but in letting someone see what lives behind your own grin. Sleep meditation. Embracing the shadow of the smile tonight. Sit in quiet. Place a gentle smile on your face. Nothing forced, just soft. Now ask, what is this smile protecting? What am I afraid to feel? Beneath it, let the breath deepen. Let the mask loosen. Breathe in. My joy is real. Breathe out. My sorrow is welcome. Let the two sit together. You do not have to choose. You are both the laughter and the cry behind it, and both are sacred. Story 19. The Sleeping Buddha. In the outer chamber of the temple lay a statue of the Buddha, unlike any other. He was not seated in meditation, not standing in grace, not teaching with one hand raised. He was lying down, his body curved in soft repose, one hand cradling his head, eyes closed, expression neither smiling nor solemn, but something deeper. Peace beyond form. The novices called him the Sleeping Buddha, and they often asked, why is he not awake, the novice who refused to rest? There was a young monk named Tenjo. He was bright, eager, awake before the bell, last to leave the zendo. He read sutras by candlelight and washed rice with such precision it bordered on worship, but his brow was always tense, his movements sharp, and though he studied peace, he did not seem to carry it. One afternoon, after a long round of walking meditation, the abbot gestured toward the reclining Buddha. Lie down beside him, he said. Tenjo blinked. Now. The abbot nodded. Just once. But Tenjo stood still. To lie down, he said, feels like giving up. The shame of rest. Many in the temple admired Tenjo's discipline, but the abbot saw the tremble in his fingers, the fatigue behind his chanting, and he recognized the disease, not of the body, not of the mind, but of the soul, forgotten in the race, to be enlightened, the disease of proving, of pleasing, of being so awake that the body forgets how to let go. The sleeping Buddha, unmoved, breathed on in stone, a reminder carved in silence. Even the awakened one rests, the history of the reclining form. The image of the sleeping Buddha is not sloth. It is parinirvana, the final breath of the Buddha as he lay beneath twin sal trees. It is not death. It is release. The Buddha did not fight the end. He laid down with full presence, without fear, without grasping, his final teaching. Be a lamp unto yourself. All conditioned things are impermanent. Strive with diligence and rest with peace. The day, Tenjo collapsed. One dawn, Tenjo fainted, his knees buckled, during prostration. The bowl in his hands shattered. The silence in the hall turned sharp. He awoke in the infirmary, embarrassed, frustrated. I was weak, he whispered. No, the abbot said, pressing a warm cloth to his forehead. You were trying to be a Buddha who never sleeps. Tenjo's breath caught. The abbot nodded toward the open door, where sunlight fell gently on the reclining statue. You cannot awaken by denying your need to close your eyes. Modern psychology, the burnout of the over-aware. In today's world, many live as Tenjo did, hyper-aware, overproductive, trying to earn rest by completing the to-do list that never ends. Even spiritual seekers fall into the trap. Meditate more, heal faster, be calm always, stay positive. But true presence is not performance. It includes the nap, the sigh, the unremarkable moment. Healing is not just action, it is also inactivity that is holy. The first time, he slept without shame. That evening, the abbot handed Tenjo a blanket. Tonight, he said, sleep beside the Buddha. Tenjo resisted, then nodded. He laid down under the stars, head turned toward the carved stillness of the statue. His breath began to slow, and as the wind moved through the bamboo, he cried, not out of sorrow, but relief. He had spent years running toward awakening, and now, for the first time, he allowed awakening to meet him in sleep. Zen koan, the monk who slept through morning, bell. A famous koan tells of a monk who missed the morning bell. When the abbot asked why, he replied, "I was dreaming of the truth." The abbot laughed and said, "Then why wake up at all?" The story is not mockery, it's reminder. Truth does not only arrive in effort, it arrives in surrender. Sometimes the most sacred act is to lay down. The Buddha. Within your rest you may feel too that rest is weakness, that unless you produce, give, serve, or grow, you're wasting time. But listen gently. You are not a machine. You are not a self-improvement project. You are a being of breath. And breath was never meant to be constant effort. The Buddha rests. So may you. Sleep meditation. Lying beside the sleeping one tonight. Lie down. Imagine the Buddha beside you. Not sitting, not speaking, just resting. Still, soft. Now place one hand on your chest, one on your belly. Breathe in. I am allowed to rest. Breathe out. Stillness is sacred. Let the world go on without you. Let the moon do its watching. Let your healing be effortless tonight. You do not need to wake up right now. You need to be held. Story 20. When the mountain bows. The villagers said the mountain never moved. It stood above them like a silent guardian, ancient, unmoved, watching as seasons folded into one another. Generations were born, grew old, and returned to dust. Yet the mountain remained, unchanged, proud, still. They called it Kashima, which meant the one who knows. But the monks who lived along its lower ridges said something else. They whispered, "The mountain bows, but only to those who bow first." The young man who climbed to be seen, he arrived with boots too clean and eyes too sharp. He did not come for peace, he came for purpose. For years he had built his life like a ladder, step by step, rung by rung, always upward. He conquered goals, commanded attention, and collected praise like stones in his pack. But none of it brought ease, only noise. So when he heard of a temple nestled on Kashima's shoulder, he decided to climb, not to surrender, but to earn silence the way he had earned everything else. He would master stillness. He would win peace. But mountains are not impressed by ambition. The gatekeeper who didn't ask why, at the temple's outer wall, an old monk swept fallen pine, needles. He looked up as the young man approached. "I've come to study," the man said. The monk smiled. "Then put down your pack." The man hesitated. "I might need what's inside." "You won't," the monk replied. Reluctantly, the man set it down. The monk bowed once and opened the gate. No questions, no tests, only an invitation to begin. The struggled to disappear. The temple was quiet. The air thinned with height. The clouds hung low like thoughts unspoken. The man joined the monks in daily rituals, cleaning, chanting, cooking, sitting. But something inside resisted. He waited for someone to notice him, to acknowledge his presence, to ask what he had achieved in the world below. No one did. They offered him rice. They bowed to him in the morning. They handed him rags and silence. He felt invisible, unseen, insignificant, and it unnerved him more than failure ever had. Zen koan, the master who lowered his eyes. A student once asked the master, "Why do the elders bow to each other?" The master replied, "Because mountains bow to wind and wind bows to empty space." In Zen, bowing is not submission. It is recognition of impermanence, of connection, of the sacredness in not being special. The man didn't yet understand, but the mountain was waiting. The day the mist rolled in one dawn, the temple disappeared into fog. The world became colorless, only breath, only gravel, only cold skin and quiet steps. The man climbed higher, seeking a view, some proof of how far he'd come, but the mist swallowed everything. He sat near the summit, legs aching, ego trembling. "What am I doing here?" he whispered. "Who am I without the climb?" The mountain said nothing. Only a gust of wind rose, strong enough to bow the tallest cedar, and in that moment he bowed too, not in ritual, not in pride, but because something inside him softened, bent, released. The moment the mountain moved. When he opened his eyes, he saw it, not with sight, but with presence. The mountain hadn't moved, but something in him had. The mountain no longer loomed. It listened, and in its vastness, he felt not small, but held. Modern psychology. The release of ego in therapy. Ego is not arrogance, it's identity attachment. The stories we cling to about who we must be, what we must prove, how we must appear. The ego protects, but it also isolates. The moment we surrender the need to matter, we begin to experience what it means to belong, not as a performer, but as a presence. The man was never rejected. He was simply waiting to be no one, so the mountain could finally welcome him. Buddha's words, "The empty cup receives." The Buddha taught, just as a vessel must be emptied before it is filled, so too must the self release its image before it knows truth. To bow is not to shrink. It is to open. It is to say, "I am not above, I am not below, I am part." The descent. He returned to the temple without fanfare. No one asked what he saw, but they noticed how he walked, slower, softer. He bowed now, not from formality, but from knowing. He swept the same steps he once ignored. He stopped measuring his worth by how high he could go, and found peace in how deeply he could listen. You and the mountain. Within, perhaps you too have climbed, built, sought, achieved, and still feel unsettled. Perhaps part of you still believes you must rise to be worthy. Let this story find you. There is no mountain to conquer, only one to become, to sit with, to bow toward, and to allow it to bow back, not to your greatness, but to your quiet willingness to be small. Sleep meditation. Bowing without a witness tonight. Sit or lie down in stillness. Close your eyes. Imagine a great mountain before you. Silent, unmoving. Now gently bow in your mind. Not to ask, not to plead, just to acknowledge, I don't have to rise tonight. I only have to be here. Breathe in. I release my roles. Breathe out. I am part of something vast. Let the mountain witness you, and let yourself become quiet enough to witness it back. Story 21. The flame that refused to burn. There was a lantern in the meditation hall that never stayed lit. Each evening, as the monks placed their cushions, the novice assigned to the task would try again. Wick trimmed, oil poured, match struck, and, each evening, it flickered, then died. The others joked, perhaps it has made peace with the dark, but the abbot said nothing. He only glanced at the novice, Junri, and waited. Junri was quiet, careful, gentle to a fault. He bowed too deeply, walked too lightly, and never raised his voice. He was liked by all. But he was known for one thing: he never lost his temper. Not once. The boy who hid the fire long before he came to the monastery. Junri had lived in a house of broken glass and broken voices. He learned early that anger was dangerous. It shattered things. It made people leave. It turned warm hands into fists, so he buried his own rage. He replaced it with smiles, with apologies, with an exquisite attentiveness that made everyone feel safe. But inside him, a small flame burned, unattended, unfed, unseen. It never went out, but it never rose either. And just like the lantern, it refused to burn. The night the fire found him one evening during silent meditation, the abbot spoke unexpectedly. "Junri," he said, "light the lamp." The hall turned to him. He stood, startled, and walked to the altar. He struck the match, brought it close, but again, nothing. A flicker, a puff. Then darkness. This time the abbot stood beside him. He leaned in, softly whispering, "It's not the oil, it's you." Junri froze. "You do everything gently," the abbot continued, "but even light needs heat, the fear of the inner flame." After the sitting, Junri asked to speak. "I don't understand," he said. "Isn't anger a poison? Doesn't fire harm?" The abbot looked up at the stars. "Only when it's denied. Only when it escapes the one who holds it." He placed a hand on Junri's chest. "You have fire, but you're afraid it makes you like those who hurt you." Junri said nothing, but his throat tightened. "You've mistaken stillness for safety," the abbot said. "But true stillness includes flame." Zen-koan. The candle that would not die a student asked the master, "How do I kill desire?" The master handed him a candle and said, "Try to extinguish it by staring at it." The student tried harder. The flame danced, unbothered. The master then blew it out. "Desire is not destroyed by denial," he said. "It is transformed by breath." The lesson: you cannot suppress what you haven't faced. Junri didn't need to extinguish his flame. He needed to meet it, name it, learn how to let it warm without burning. Modern psychology, the frozen fire in trauma therapy. This is known as emotional inhibition. Many who've experienced volatile or abusive environments learn to fear their own feelings. Anger becomes dangerous, so they shut it down. But repressed anger doesn't vanish. It calcifies. In the jaw, in the gut, in self-abandonment, in perfectionism, in chronic fatigue. The body keeps the flame hidden until it either explodes or burns silently, consuming from within. Junri wasn't at peace. He was frozen. The fire that finally rose weeks later during morning chores. A young novice accidentally spilled hot tea on Junri's lap. The novice panicked. "I'm so sorry." Junri stood quickly, too quickly, and turned away, hands shaking. The other monks stared, But Junri didn't speak. He walked to the edge of the garden where no one could hear and punched the earth. Once, twice. Then he cried, not out of pain, but out of release. Something had cracked, not open, awake, the lantern. That stayed lit. That night, he lit the temple lantern again. It caught fire instantly. The flame stood steady, small, golden, unwavering. No one clapped. No one commented. But the abbot nodded once, eyes closed, and Junri bowed, not to the fire, but to himself. Buddha's words, not destroy, but transform, in the Dhammapada, the Buddha says, as a blacksmith tempers steel, so too must we temper the heart, not to destroy its heat, but to make it useful. Anger is not the enemy. Used wisely, it becomes clarity, boundaries, passion, energy to protect and to serve. The fire within Junri didn't want to harm. It wanted to be held. You and the fire. You suppress. Perhaps you too were taught to hide your flame, to be good, pleasant, polite. But maybe something in you still burns, a need unmet, a truth unspoken, a grief unprocessed. You don't need to lash out. You don't need to explode. You only need to listen. Let the flame teach you what it came to say. Sleep meditation, meeting the flame tonight. Close your eyes. Visualize a flame in your chest, small, steady. Ask gently, what am I afraid to feel? What fire have I buried? Now breathe in. I allow. Breathe out. I do not fear my fire. Place one hand on your heart. Let the heat rise, not to consume you, but to remind you that you are alive. You are not dangerous. You are simply ready to feel and ready at last to burn in peace. Story 22. The Smile in the Dust. There was a room in the monastery no one entered. It wasn't locked. It wasn't cursed. It was simply left behind. They called it the dust room. Years ago, it had been a study space filled with scrolls, ink, and sunlight. But as monks left or passed on, as new ones arrived and new practices evolved, the room was used less and less, until eventually, no one noticed it anymore. Dust claimed the space. Cobwebs stretched like forgotten prayers. Even light hesitated when it passed through the wooden slats. But one morning, a monk named Renshin decided to clean it. Not because he had been told to, but because he felt something there calling him. The monk who stopped smiling. Renshin was known for his silence, not the meditative kind, but the muted kind. He moved gently, bowed deeply, performed each task with care. But he never smiled. Not out of anger, not out of sorrow, but as if joy had simply disappeared one winter and never returned. He wasn't sad. He wasn't cold. He was, as the abbot once whispered, frozen in the middle of a laugh. So when he began sweeping the dust room, no one questioned it, but they watched from a distance. Because sometimes the heart speaks not in words, but in where we place our hands. The smile beneath the layer, each morning, Renshin returned. He swept, he wiped, he repaired cracked windows, rethreaded old mats, oiled the hinges. He didn't rush, he didn't complain, and slowly the room began to breathe again. One day, behind an old cabinet, he found a small wooden box. Inside, a mirror, cracked, dusted, dull, and tucked beneath it, folded neatly, was a torn piece of paper. On it, in childlike brushstrokes, Smiling is what the face does when the soul remembers itself. He held it for a long time. Then, just once, he smiled. Zen koan. The dust. On the statue, a student asked the master, "How do I find my true self?" The master handed him a cloth and pointed to an old Buddha statue covered in dust. "Clean it." The student returned hours later. "Still dusty," he said. "Then clean again," the master replied. Days passed. The cloth grew black. The student's hands became cracked. Finally, one morning, he whispered, "It's not the statue I'm cleaning. It's the eyes that are seeing it." The master smiled. "So it is." Renshin's awakening. Weeks passed. The dust room became a place of quiet return. Not for others, but for him. He planted a small bonsai near the window, hung an old wind chime at the door, placed the mirror on the southern wall, not to gaze into, but to honor. And sometimes when he swept, he hummed, a low, wordless melody, half memory, half breath. One day the abbot entered. "You found something," he said. Renshin bowed. "Not in the room," he whispered. "In myself. Modern psychology. Dormant. Joy in. Psychology, we speak of anhedonia, the absence of joy. It's not sadness, it's the quiet erosion of feeling. Trauma, grief, depression. These things numb the nervous system. Life continues. Tasks are completed, but color drains. Taste flattens. Music dulls. And we forget that we once smiled without effort. But healing does not always begin with fireworks. Sometimes it begins with a broom, a memory, a fragment of self that stirs again in dust and light. Buddha's teaching, the joy of the present in the Udana, the Buddha said, "Happy indeed we live without hate among the hateful. Amid those who hate, we dwell free from hatred. Amid suffering, we are content. Joy is not escapism. It is presence. Not the loud kind, but the soft smile that rises when you see the sun through dirty glass, and it's still beautiful." Renshin didn't find joy. He remembered it, because joy was never gone. It was simply under the dust. The room that became a mirror. Eventually, others entered the room, not in crowds, just one at a time. They sat. They sipped tea. They said things they hadn't spoken in years. And always, Renshin would be there. Not teaching, not guiding, just smiling. Not for others, but because he had remembered. The soul does not need fixing, only witnessing. You and the dust. You carry, you too may have a room within that's gone unused. A joy once alive. A playfulness once free. A softness once untouched by judgment. You do not need to force its return. You need only begin to clean. Gently, daily, without expectation. Wipe the dust of cynicism. Sweep the corners of exhaustion. Let air in through the window of small beauty. Your smile is not lost. It is waiting. Sleep meditation. Smiling without reason tonight. Lie still. Place one hand on your cheek. Feel the tension there. How much effort it takes to stay neutral, closed. Now let your lips soften, not into a grin, just into a remembrance. Ask, what have I forgotten to feel? Can I welcome a smile even without cause? Breathe in. I remember. Breathe out. I return to lightness. Let the smile be small. Let it stay. It will lead you home. Story 23. The Cup of Grief. There was a cup in the temple kitchen that no one used. It was beautiful, pale blue porcelain with a lotus etched along its rim. But a fine hairline crack ran from its lip to its base. Not enough to break it, but enough to make others avoid it. The monks left it untouched, except for one. Every morning, at first light, the tea master chose that cup. He poured the same warmth into it as he did the others, held it the same way, washed it with the same cloth, and when he set it down, he bowed slightly. No one asked why, but they noticed that on the days when grief was heavy in the air, when news of death arrived, or the sky cried without reason, that cup always held the first pour. The woman who couldn't cry one spring, a woman came to the monastery with eyes that had seen too much and tears that had never fallen. She had lost her son. Sudden, quiet, a moment that collapsed time. She didn't scream. She didn't break. She walked and walked until she reached the gates of the temple, barefoot, breath shallow, heart sealed. They welcomed her without words. They gave her water, space, and silence. But still, she did not cry. The tea. She refused. One morning, the tea master brought her a tray. 3 cups, all warm. She stared at them. "I can't," she whispered. He didn't ask why. He simply poured into the cracked cup and placed it before her. "This one," he said, "was made for you." She looked up surprised. "Because I'm broken." "No," he said softly. "Because you're holding something sacred, and it needs room to leak." Zen koan, the cup that was too full. A famous Zen story tells of a professor who visits a master. The master pours tea into the guest's cup and keeps pouring. The tea spills over, wetting the table. The professor cries out, "It's full!" The master replies, "You are like this cup, too full of your own knowledge. To learn, you must first empty." But grief is not knowledge. Grief is the silence left when love no longer has a place to land. And sometimes, the only way to hold grief is to let it overflow. The first sip. The woman took the cracked cup in her hands. She didn't drink. She just held it. It was warm, alive, and something inside her chest cracked, quietly, gently, not an explosion, a shift. She didn't cry, but her breath changed, and the tea master smiled. Because that too was a beginning. Modern psychology. The body's grief in trauma therapy. Grief often hides not in thoughts, but in flesh, in the throat that tightens for no reason, in the shoulders that curl inward, in the sleep that never restores. Unprocessed grief doesn't vanish. It lingers, waiting for permission. We don't heal by forcing tears. We heal by making space for what wants to be known. The cracked cup doesn't apologize for leaking. It offers what it can, and that is enough. The season of rain weeks passed. The woman swept leaves, listened to bells, slept beneath moonlight, but the tears still would not come. Until one evening, during spring rain, she stood alone in the garden. She held the cracked cup, let the rain fill it, and whispered, "I miss you." That was all. Her voice trembled. Her hands did too, and for the first time since the day everything changed, she cried. Buddha's teaching, grief as love with nowhere to go. The Buddha taught that all things are impermanent, but he also taught compassion, not only for others, but for ourselves. In the Karaniya Metta Sutta, he said, "Just as a mother protects her child, even at the risk of her own life, so should one cultivate boundless love toward all beings. This includes the parts of you that grieve, that ache, That remember. Grief is not weakness. It is devotion in transition. It is love, standing at the gate, without a door to knock on. The cup that was never repaired. The woman never asked for a new cup. She returned it each time, gently rinsed. And one day, as she left the monastery, she left behind a note tucked beneath it. Thank you for showing me that something can still be beautiful. Even when it cannot hold everything. The tea master read it, smiled, and poured the next morning's first tea into the same cracked cup. You and the grief. You carry. Perhaps you too have a sorrow that leaks quietly beneath your days. A loss you haven't named. A love that ended. Version of yourself you had to leave behind. Grief doesn't need to be solved. It needs to be honored. Let yourself be the cup cracked, capable, still able to hold warmth even if not every drop remains. Sleep meditation, holding the cup. Gently tonight, close your eyes. Place your hands together, cupped. Imagine within them a small vessel, porcelain, imperfect. This is your grief, not broken, just tender. Now ask, what am I still holding? Can I let it be here without needing to fix it? Breathe in. This too is love. Breathe out. This too belongs. Let the tears come or let them wait. You are not empty. You are simply human, and that is sacred. Story 24. The Temple Without Walls. There was once a temple that vanished. Not in a fire, not by force, it simply disappeared. The walls were taken down piece by piece, the roof removed with care, the altars packed away, the bells silenced. But the monks remained. They still bowed, still chanted, still meditated each morning with the rising sun. Only now they did so beneath the open sky. When travelers arrived, confused, they asked, "Where is the temple?" The abbot would point to the earth, the wind, the space between their breaths, and say, "You're standing in it." The pilgrim who wanted a roofer man once journeyed far, seeking refuge from his thoughts. He had read of temples high in the mountains, hidden by cloud and vow, places where silence echoed and the walls held wisdom like water. When he arrived and saw only open air, he grew angry. "This is not a temple," he said. The abbot bowed. "Then what is a temple?" The man replied. "Walls, doors, incense, statues, boundaries between the sacred and the profane." The abbot smiled. "Then you are still standing outside." The boundaries we build, we are taught to seek sacredness in containers: a church, a shrine, a book, a robe, a teacher. We crave structure because the formless feels too vast. We believe that without boundaries, something loses its value. But in Zen, the ultimate teaching is this: form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. The sacred is not limited by walls. It appears when we stop separating ourselves from what is. The monks didn't lose their temple. They simply stopped needing one to remember. The monk who sat in the rain during a spring storm. The rain came hard and sudden. Most of the younger monks rushed to cover the scrolls, move the cushions, find shelter. But one older monk remained seated in the field, eyes closed, face lifted. The pilgrim, watching, approached him. "Aren't you wet?" he asked. "Yes," the monk replied. "And uncomfortable?" "Yes." "Then why stay?" The monk opened his eyes, serene. "Because the Buddha taught me to sit with what is. And right now, it is rain." Modern psychology, Sacredness in the present. In trauma, healing, and mindfulness, we often speak of spaciousness. Healing happens not in shrinking from pain, but in expanding our capacity to be with it, not fixing, just witnessing. Many people enter therapy wanting a container, a plan, a label, a promise. But true transformation often begins when we realize, I can carry the sacred with me, even when nothing around me looks holy. The temple without walls is not metaphor. It is a way of being. The Pilgrim's Question. One evening, the man asked the abbot, if there are no walls, how do you keep things sacred? The abbot replied, we don't keep it. We become it. But what about the world? Noise, distraction, cruelty? The abbot poured tea. When the tea is hot, he said, it doesn't demand a quiet room. It simply warms the cup. The sacred does not retreat. It permeates, even in traffic, even in grief, even in a room where no one believes anymore. It arrives when we do. Buddha's teaching, wherever you stand. The Buddha said, with mindfulness, make each step your prayer. The earth is your altar. The breath is your bell. He did not teach temple building. He taught presence. He walked. He sat beneath trees. He gave sermons to crowds and to no one at all. The teaching never needed walls, because the Dharma is not a place. It is a way of seeing. The temple in your chest. Eventually, the pilgrim stopped asking where the temple was. He woke before dawn, sat in the grass, listened to the wind. He noticed that the chants still rang true, not because of walls, but because he'd finally grown quiet enough to hear them within. He did not become a monk. He did not stay. But when he left, he carried something with him, and wherever he went after, people said he moved like someone who belonged to something sacred, even if no one could see it. You and the sacred you carry. Perhaps you are searching for peace, for meaning, for a teacher, for a room where silence finally feels safe. Let this story find you. You are already in the temple. It does not need incense. It does not need candles. It needs only this, the willingness to pause, the breath that softens your chest. The moment you realize the sky is just as holy as the scripture, there is no outside, there is no other place. Sleep meditation, entering the temple of now tonight. Lie down. Let the world fall away. Picture yourself standing before a temple, but there are no doors, no threshold, only open space. Now say silently, I am already inside. I bring the sacred with me. Breathe in. This breath is my bell. Breathe out. This body is my altar. You are not lost. You are not far. You are already home. Story 25. The Master walks alone. The Master left before dawn. He did not tell anyone. He packed no bag. He carried no scrolls, no incense, not even his bowl, only his breath, only his silence, only the vast space within him where all teachings had dissolved. He had taught for decades, raised students like seasons raise trees, listened to their questions with the patience of stone, and answered with riddles that were not answers, but openings. He had loved them all, but now it was time to walk alone. The students who woke to absence. When the sun rose, the temple stirred. Monk discovered the Master's cushion, still warm but empty. A note was found, written with gentle brushstrokes. The path continues. Walk quietly. There was no panic, no farewell ceremony, just stillness. The kind that speaks not of absence, but of completion. The master had not left them. He had simply stopped standing between them and the sky. The teaching that ends in silence, Zen. Masters do not retire. They dissolve, not into nothing, but into everything. They spend their lives pointing toward the moon, then one day lower their hand. They know that no finger can replace the sky. So the final teaching is often unspoken. A breath left behind, a teacup left empty, a gate left ajar. The master walked not to escape, but to return, to himself, to the world, to the quiet before even Buddha had a name, the forest that received him. He walked where paths were worn thin by deer, where moss clung to bark like memory, where stones remembered footsteps older than scripture. He did not count days. He did not chant. He sat by rivers and watched leaves swirl. He drank rain. He listened to wind with the reverence of a child, listening to a bedtime story never told before, and in that listening, he forgot he was a master. He was simply here. Zen koan, the master, disappears. A student once asked the master, "When will you stop teaching?" The master smiled and pointed to a candle. "When it burns down," he said. The next morning, the candle was gone. The student cried. The wind did not, because the wind knew the flame is not gone. It is simply everywhere now. The psychology of letting go of the teacher. In therapeutic language, a good therapist eventually becomes unnecessary. Not because their work ends, but because the client has learned to carry the healing inside themselves. The true teacher plants seeds, but it is the student who must water, and one day walk on alone, not in abandonment, but in arrival. The master knew this. He had never wanted followers, only mirrors polished enough to reflect the light already there. The memory in the bamboo grove. One novice, the youngest, returned to the master's favorite sitting spot beneath the bamboo grove. There, carved lightly into the wood, he found a single line. "You do not need me anymore," the boy cried. But his tears were not sorrow. They were water for the seed, now ready to sprout. Buddha's final instruction in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, the Buddha before passing, said, "All compounded things are subject to vanishing. Strive diligently. Be your own lamp." Even the Buddha walked alone in the end, not in isolation, but in completion. The walk is not away from others. It is toward what can only be found in solitude. Direct knowing. Unfiltered breath. The silence beneath all scripture. The master's final smile. No one knows where he went. Some say he became a tree. Some say he walked into the mountains and sat until the sky bowed before him. Some say they saw his reflection once in a still pond, smiling without a face. But all agree. He took nothing with him, because he had already given everything away, and in the space he left behind, something larger arrived. You and the path you must walk alone. Perhaps you've had a teacher, a guide, a voice that showed you where to look. And now you feel alone. But listen carefully. This is not abandonment. This is initiation. Because the deepest wisdom is not taught. It is discovered. In the breath only you can take. In the steps only you can walk. In the silence only you can hear. There comes a time when the master must vanish, so you may find the master within. Sleep meditation. Walking alone with no fear tonight, lie in stillness. Picture a path before you, quiet, unmarked, gently lit by moonlight. There is no one beside you, and yet You are not alone. Now ask, can I trust the steps I take? What wisdom already lives in me, waiting to be remembered? Breathe in. I carry the teaching. Breathe out. I am ready to walk. Let the teacher go. Let yourself begin. Even now, even here, you are not without guidance. You are simply becoming it. You've walked with us through 25 stories, not just of monks and mountains, but of grief and joy, silence and breath, of your own heart remembering what it once knew before the world got loud. If any part of these whispers found their way into your stillness, if a single word helped you soften or pause or smile through tears, then let that be enough. But if you'd like to share what moved you, we invite you to leave a comment below. Your words may be the light someone else needs to see. And if these stories have become a part of your inner path, please consider liking this video, sharing it with someone quietly seeking, and subscribing to The Empty Boat. This channel isn't about followers, it's about return. Return to breath. Return to presence. Return to the sacred that was never far. Until next time, may you walk gently, breathe deeply, and remember, the boat was never really empty. It was simply waiting for you.